Good evening, good afternoon. I'm not sure this is on. Welcome to the September 2nd, 2015 meeting of the Sherborn Board of Selectmen. We'll ask if Dave Williams, our town administrator, could read the agenda and ask for amendments to the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we'll vote to approve or amend the agenda and add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance. And I have two agenda amendments. Public comment period, and then announcement for fishing derby at Farm Pond on September 20th. Then recognition of police officer awards. And then a borrowing consideration of state anticipation note. And then a personnel action involving an exemption in the conflict of interest law and an appointment of assistant treasurer. And then recycling committee appointment, insurance advisory committee appointment, report from the CM&D director, and then a review of agreements for Unibank services with the tax collector, an agreement for town council legal services. There will be no financial items tonight. Town administrator's report, and then selectmen reports, discussion on DEP letter regarding General Chemical, and discussion on Town Hall campus, closing of Sanger Street. Look at the meeting calendar, set the next meeting, and then consider minutes of July 15th, 2015, and then consideration of warrant item.
Great. And David, I think you mentioned the fishing derby at September 20th. It's September 30th. That was just a misstatement, I think. Is it the 20th?
Actually, it's the 20th.
Okay, so then it's written on our agenda as the 30th.
Right.
Okay, just to clear that out. Okay. And do we have any other amendments to this agenda?
Yeah, there are two amendments. One was in the posted wording under the personnel item. It originally read personnel structure, consideration of MGL Chapter 268A, Section 20B4, exemption, special municipal employee designation of assistant tax collector, and concurrence of Lisa Litch appointment as assistant treasurer. And the new one, how it should read, is personnel action, consideration of 1, MGL Chapter 268A, Section 20B exemption for Lisa Lynch, and 2, approval of Lisa Lynch appointment as assistant treasurer. And that amendment was basically due to some confusion on whether a designation was needed or an exemption was needed.
Okay, and everything else was on the posted agenda?
And the other item was a late one-day pouring license that came in yesterday. This is for an event on September 12th. It's a memorial service type event, and they've requested a license for that. Okay,
so we have those three amendments, the correction of the date, the personnel action, and the pouring license. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Okay, any further discussion or additions to the agenda? All in favor? Aye. So that's unanimous, and everybody's here. We don't have to do a roll call vote, and we can move on to the next item, public comment. And our recycling chair, Carol Rubenstein, is asked to address us. Could you tell us about the hazardous waste? Carol, I think people ask if you could speak into the mic.
Thank you. I just want to announce to everybody in town that we're having a Household Hazardous Waste Day on Saturday, September 19th at the Highway Garage from 9 until 1. Our preference is for people to sign up for appointments. This helps to alleviate any traffic problems on Butler Street and on Route 16. It also allows us to inform our contractor about what our anticipated capacity will be so that they'll bring the correct number of barrels to collect the hazardous waste so we don't run out of capacity before we close. So Online appointments can be made by going to the home page and clicking on Household Hazardous Waste, and you'll be taken to the appointment page, and there's also a way to click from there to see what the acceptable items are. You can also call me at home, although I don't prefer that. It's so much easier for me to take the online appointments, but I realize that not everybody is capable of doing appointments online. And my telephone number is 508-653-8794. So I hope everybody who has hazardous waste will plan to come 9 to 1 on the 19th at the Highway Garage.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, and we had a second public comment request, Sarah O'Connell.
Hi, I just wanted to announce the Pine Hill 5K, the 4th annual Pine Hill 5K on October 18th. And so I wrote you guys a letter and asked permission to use the streets from 8:30 to 11:30 on Sunday, starting at Cemetery Lane, doing the 3.4-mile loop, and then ending back at the fire station. So starting and ending at the fire station to benefit the CSA.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Paul, you had...
Was this reviewed by the chiefs? Is it okay?
Okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, I don't think
That'd be cool.
there's no application in front of us at this point. I think
I did
you're all
submit
set. Yeah, they're so all set with that.
We have all the sign-ups.
Okay, great, good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes,
Okay, we're good.
we're good. Okay, and next we are to our next item, which is the announcement of a fishing derby, and Michael Mastrobono is here. Yeah, Michael, so just speak right into the mic, and oh, you have some visual aids here too? This is good.
Is it on? Is the projector on?
You know, while they're doing that, maybe we can approve some minutes. Since they're setting up, we have the July 15th minutes. I don't know if people have had a chance to review those or had any comments on those. Everybody okay? Move approval from Paul. Second, okay. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the July 15th minutes? Does anybody have any changes into you, Diane?
No, there was a minor change.
Minor change? Great, okay. All in favor? Aye, all right, that's done, we've approved, and we're caught up almost, right?
I have another set to bring next week, so yeah, we're pretty
That's
close.
great.
Approving the warrant.
We can approve the warrant, too. It's a great suggestion by Vice Chair Durensis. Do we have that in front of us?
You do.
Here we go. Right there. Okay, so do we have a vote, a motion to approve the, Chuck's already signed it, so we know he wants to approve it. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of approving the warrant? Okay, great. And this was the town administrator's salary warrant. Okay, well, we're working from both ends of the agenda today.
What about doing the police awards?
Um,
Because it looks like he's still working on it.
Yeah, I don't know. We could do some appointments. Do you want to do those?
Okay.
Let's do our appointments and get that taken care of. The recycling committee. Oh, we're all set. Okay, so we're going to go back to the fishing derby announcement. Michael, you ready to go?
Yeah. All right. Oh, sorry. All right. Hi, I'm Michael Mastrobono, and this is my proposal for a fishing derby on Farm Pond, Fish for a Cause. So my vision is to have a family event on Farm Pond to teach the importance of protecting Farm Pond's water quality, sustainable sport fishing practices such as catch and release, teach good sportsmanship, teach boating and fishing safety, raise money for the Wounded Warriors Project, and have a good time. So this is an event overview of how I plan the day going. It will happen on September 20th from 2:30 to 7. I chose this date because it doesn't interfere with the triathlon, and it's after the pond officially closes for the summer. Yes, and so at 2:30, the participants will arrive in the parking lot. We will then have a boating, washing technique and tournament rules presentation, and that will happen at 3 o'clock. At 3:30, we will then wash and inspect all boats to make sure that they're properly cleaned and free of any invasive species that may have been on them. The boats will then be carried to the launch area. At 4 o'clock, the tournament will start, and we will fish until 6:30, when the tournament will end. At 6:45, there will be an award ceremony, and the event will end, and we'll start our departure by 7. So this is some other information on the event. I am the organizer, but we will have some adult supervision, such as my father and Dave Kaplan, who's a Sherborn and Farm Pond resident, and then we'll have one additional Sherborn resident adult to be determined. We're going to have a maximum of 25 canoes participating with an entry fee of $25 per person. And our goal is to raise $1,000 for charity. The tournament rules will be 2 persons max per canoe. There will be a mandatory life preserver rule, and catch and release it will be implied. And we'll also have an honor system for counting the fish. And the charitable organization that we're going to be fundraising for is the Wounded Warriors Project. Is there any questions, comments, or concerns, or any?
Sure, I'll have some.
Sure, Paul, go ahead.
First, I want to commend you for doing this and for the presentation. It was quite nicely done.
Thank you.
To the point, a lot of information presented very nicely, so I congratulate you.
Thanks.
The second point was the references to boat washing. This is something that those of us who care about Farm Pond have been very concerned about. There are many ponds and lakes in the area that have milfoil and other contagious weeds. So washing of boats, particularly for Farm Pond, is very, very important.
Yep.
So I really love the fact that you've emphasized that in the presentation in several places. You have it on the front page. You had it in the itinerary there of 2 places. One was the training and then one was the actual checking. So good for you on that. Your reference on one slide that there would be a life preserver requirement was singular. I'm hoping that there's an S on that because if you're going to have 2 people per
That is correct.
canoe, having them fight over one life preserver in case of a need.
Yes, everyone will
If
have.
there was 2.
Everyone will have a life jacket for them, and that will be required in order to participate.
Excellent. Do we need a vote to authorize these?
Do we have any other comments?
One question, will participants have to have a state fishing license to
Well, that's up
participate?
that by registering for the tournament, it is implied that they will have the proper licensing in order to participate. So that includes having a license with the state of Massachusetts, and it will just be enforced. However,
You might want to just communicate that.
yeah, I'll make a point to make sure everyone's clear on that.
So, yeah, Michael, you did a great job with the presentation, and you could teach a lot of our guests during the year about, quick, efficient, to-the-point presentations. Thank you. A question about, I guess a couple questions. One was there was a comment from the Farm Pond Committee, which you probably saw in terms of controlling food at the event. Do you have a way to do that or a plan for how you would do that?
I have not. I know that there's a no eating on the beach policy. So I mean, I don't think anyone's going to be on the beach at all. If people do have food, which I'm assuming because it's a pretty long event, we could maybe have a designated area for eating with enough trash cans and everything to clean up after. We'll make sure that the whole parking lot and the landing and everything is 100% the way it was before.
Yeah, just pack in and pack out, right?
Yeah.
And then the other question I have for you is this an organization sponsored? I know you've organized it. Is it a connection with a Scout project or something?
No, it is. It's just kind of an idea I had, and I saw Channing Pond in Dover had a fishing tournament, and I thought it was a good idea if Farm Pond could have one of their own, because I think Farm Pond's a great fishing place, and not a lot of people have really had an opportunity in order to fish there, and I don't know, I think it'll be good.
Great initiative. Thank you. So do we want to, poll question to vote, do we want to have a vote just to endorse the idea anyway, or?
Yeah, I was thinking that if we are going to be devoting the reservation to this, we probably need a vote because we manage the reservation to set the reservation aside for this event.
Great. You want to make the motion?
I so move that we authorize the use of the reservation for this purpose.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, you got your vote, 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
I'm interested to see the results of the honor system.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's going to be some big fish coming out of
that.
Yeah, I've got some people to not include in the tournament. That's
And Jim, thank you too. I know you're going to be one of the guards or judges or something. Thank you. All right, next we've got Chief Thompson with Police Officer Awards.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share a very proud moment for me as a police chief for the town. When I accepted my role as a chief going on 7 years ago, one of the critical flaws that I identified in the department is the lack of training that the personnel had. And I made that one of my more pressing issues moving forward. So I went out and identified a training curriculum that's run by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Law Enforcement Executive Development Association, and I began sending, I believe it was Lieutenant Bento, into the first training about 5 years ago. And that training, I believe, was a super... Was it the
Command
super?
Institute in New Hampshire.
Okay. So 5 years ago, we began by sending Lieutenant Bento to these command programs, these supervisor programs, and I'm proud to say that all three of my command staff have completed the trilogy through FBI LEADA. They have completed roughly 3 weeks of leadership training. And if I can just briefly go through the 3 classes that they took and explain kind of the curriculum. The first class that they took was called the Supervisor Leadership Institute. And the goal of that particular program is to train first-line supervisors and middle managers to enhance their leadership competencies. They engage in personality diagnostics, leadership case studies, mentoring, developing the personnel, performance management, risk management, and credibility. The second program that the 3 command staff took was actually called Command Leadership. That was a week-long program, and the focus of that particular training program was to provide real-life, contemporary, best practice strategies and techniques for officers that aspire to be at the command level. So we're talking sergeants, lieutenants, captains, and so on. And the final program that they all had to take was the executive leadership program. And that program is more interactive. You kind of interact with command staff from all over the country, and you share different ideas and philosophies and kind of what you're doing in your agency. So I actually had Sergeant Tetson bring over the Trilogy Award that the three of them presented. Apparently, Sergeant Nolte didn't get his second one yet. So I simply wanted to share that with the community, share it with the Board of Selectmen, and really I'm proud of my guys. They did a great job, and we have a lot more training opportunities that we're looking to do. And if you have any questions for them about their experience.
We're all proud of you too. We're proud of each and every one of you, and particularly proud over the last, I think you said 7 years, how the police department in this community has been elevated, not only in terms of training, but in terms of skills and in terms of the effectiveness of the organization. So for myself and for the people of the town of Sherborn, we congratulate you, and we are very impressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all. Thanks.
Did I get to keep this? That was in the
I don't think you keep this.
Oh, by the way, Lieutenant Arto and Sergeant Nolte will be participating in that fishing derby.
I'm going to win. Is that because the other two you were doing the 5K? Is that why?
Well,
Check the licenses. I have a license.
that with the long legs will be doing the 5K.
It's not that long.
We fixed the sound?
Is that me?
Okay.
They hit the mics.
They did? Okay. Next we have a discussion of borrowing in anticipation of a Chapter 90 grant, and we have our treasurer, Heather Peck, for that. Thank you, Heather.
Hello, everybody. So, as you know, the Maple Street project has started and I believe completed, and is awesome. It's a really smooth ride. And whenever we have a project like that, we have the opportunity to apply for a state grant for reimbursement from the state, but that usually does not come in prior to the vendor bills coming in and the payables having to go out the door. So we go in and do a borrowing, very short-term borrowing, to pay for the bills as they come in while we're waiting for reimbursement from the state. So in this case, the state grant approval was for $364,901, and we are asking that you approve the bond that I am putting before, or sorry, the borrowing that I'm putting before you for $364,901, which is a note in anticipation of state aid.
Okay.
So it's Century Bank and Trust Company. It is for, sorry, let me read it out loud for those people in the room who don't have the benefit of the note in front of them.
0.75%.
Sorry. It's 0.75%. I'm just looking for the, you know what, you guys have my note. Do you have the expiration date for that is, I'm sorry, payable on May 30th, 2016. And the reason why I do May 30th, 2016 is because it's after tax receipts for that time, and that way we are assured that we will have the monies in-house to pay off the loan.
I noticed that the state has signed off on the project request.
They did.
Approved on August 10th.
Correct. Thank you, Paul.
So, state approval, and with the Board of Selectmen's approval of the project, all the legal work is done, so it's simply a question of when the state cuts the check. So I have no problem with this, and I'm happy to make the motion unless there's more discussion.
No, just a question in terms of the date. Is the intent to just repay it when you have the receipts, or would you wait until the 30th of May?
We'll wait till May 30th.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, there's no way of telling when the receipts will actually come in. And you would assume they will be in well before May 30th of 2016. I think that is not an unreasonable expectation, but we just like to wait until after we know tax receipts have been coming through the door to pay off notes and bonds.
Okay. Anybody else have questions on this?
I assume there's no prepayment penalty if we change our line?
We would have had to have paid a higher rate for a prepayment,
Okay,
no
so-
prepayment penalty, so I did not enter into that particular note.
0.75% is
Yeah,
pretty good.
yeah. I'm sorry, I should have probably calculated what the interest would be for the period. I did not, but it's not gonna, I will do that next time.
About $2,700.
Thank you.
Okay. The second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Another unanimous vote. And what do we sign, Heather?
Okay, there's a few documents, and then I...
Oh, we have the town clerk has to witness this,
That's
though.
right, and she was supposed to be here at 6:30.
She's downstairs, Nancy has it.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. If I could just take 2 minutes to just talk,
I was
you want to jump in on something?
just on the interest rate.
Oh, thank
It's
you.
only 8 months at the 0.75. I didn't know what you calculated.
Oh, okay. Calculated on a year, so if it's only 8 months, then it's less than that.
Yeah.
I just
22.43.
Is
want
it?
to...
It's like $18,000.
I also want to raise to your attention that I will be coming back at your next meeting for another borrowing, which will be a bond anticipation note for the $900,000 fire truck that we expect delivery for in December. We have considered it prudent to do that sooner rather than later. It will help with cash flow through the fall. And I have talked to Chief Morrissey, and we fully expect there will be no issues with delivery of the truck before the end of December. And we have another borrowing coming due next May 11th of 2016. This borrowing for the fire truck will coincide with that due date as well, so that we will just make it a little easier for timing and payment and everything. In addition to that will be an $80,000 item for a Pine Hill project that is being done during the month of August that we have not yet borrowed on, and the work will be completed. I believe it's already completed because they were going to have it done before the kids went back to school. That's for gym air handler upgrades and classroom unit ventilation. So I'll be coming in front of you for a bond anticipation note at your next meeting for $980,000. It went out to bid today, so I don't have any rates or any other information yet. And we'll be getting the note date will be September 25th, which is when I expect the proceeds to come in. So just to let you know, your next packet will include that borrowing.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question?
They didn't do $80,000 worth of work at Pine Hill
It
Where
is
did that come
actually $79,470.
for the classroom unit vendors.
Yeah, it was, I have the project in front of me from Hans, the new business manager. It was $42,775 for the library and gym handler, and $36,533 for the classroom unit ventilation. So 79 is what the vendor payments are expected to be.
Okay.
Okay. But that is only a portion of the $198,000 that was approved at town meeting. The other projects went out to bid but haven't started yet.
Right.
Okay. Paul, you had something?
Yes, going back to the fire truck.
Yes.
I recall in past years, if we paid everything up front, we get a discount of some kind. And we get it cheaper than if we pay it out over time or something like that.
Not in this case.
Not in this case. And that, yeah.
So we get no discount at all for that.
That was not part of the original, when we went out, or the discussions previous with the previous accountant.
Okay.
So,
Okay, great.
All right, just a heads up for next time we shall meet.
All right, and we'll sign this when we see the town
That
clerk.
would be
Thank
terrific.
you. Let's go on to the next item. Oh, good. Yeah, the next item is the personnel, exactly. So it's our tax collector and our treasurer. And I don't know, David, are you introducing this, or are they introducing this?
Yeah, I can just give
Why don't you
a brief-
explain why it's coming to us, because there's been some question about why we need to, or under what authority we would sign off on this.
Right, so we'll start with the first part. We had a position open that's for assistant treasurer, and that was properly advertised, and there was an internal candidate who happens to be the assistant collector working for Nancy Hess in the collector's office, and that's Lisa Lynch. So she was the top finalist. Due to conflict of interest laws, she can't serve in two municipal positions at the same time, so the Board of Selectmen would have to vote an exemption for her to serve in two positions at the same time. We've looked at what possibilities, if there were any other conflicts that we weren't thinking of, and the only conflict we could identify would be turnover of cash from the collector's office to the assistant treasurer. Could be the same person, so Heather and Nancy will work that out, and so that conflict doesn't occur.
Yeah, we plan to contact the auditors and make sure that we follow proper procedures for that.
So this does not create a benefited position. Lisa's position is already benefited, and then by adding on the hours of the assistant treasurer, it's just adding on more hours, and that position will have to be limited to 500 hours under the law. I don't know if Paul wants to add anything more to the complexity of that than what I just said, but that's the gist of it.
Just a comment on the future. It would be in everybody's interest to actually combine the two positions into one position in some way. Otherwise, there's a limitation of 500 hours for the amount of work that can be done in the second position. Rather than have that limitation, might as well have the ability to go back and forth between the two positions as needed. And the way you do that avoids the conflict of interest law is, instead of having two positions, have them be one position.
It's definitely something that I think we're considering a whole bunch of different things at the town level as it relates to the treasurer collector. It's definitely something that should be added into those conversations. But given that the current term for the treasurer is only 1 year, and we're having discussions about all those other scenarios, I think this is the most prudent approach right now, and what actually makes Lisa such a unique candidate, because she's here already. And so if things were to change in the next year, she's very malleable, and she understands the culture and the environment, and she's been terrific through this process, because I started interviewing the week after I was elected. So it's been 3 months of a process related to this. So it definitely becomes part of the conversation, Paul, I think.
So Paul or David, can you explain the conflict of interest issue, just so people understand why it's come to us for a vote on that issue?
I don't know why.
What the statutory requirement is?
Well, the requirement is that a person can't serve in two municipal offices, basically. But I don't know what the background of the statute, why they came up with that.
No, I'm asking just about, because we have people who job share across offices. Why is this different, I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, there are some that have already been designated as special municipal employees that can, and there's a whole list that the town has done on that. And those people can work in two areas. Like, they could serve on a committee, and they could also act as a contractor for the town. And you're designating the positions and that part of the law. But this is exempting the person from that conflict, not designating any exemption of either one of the positions. It's a strange law, but I'm not. We don't have any other positions that are in any sort of conflict like that. But the selectmen a few years ago voiced that they would like to see combined positions where it doesn't create a new benefited position.
Do you have anything on that, Paul? Anything to add on
Well,
that?
just the policy behind the statute. This came out of the Ward Commission years ago. It was headed by Professor Archibald Cox. And it was considered a corrupt practice where so many government employees kept adding to their portfolio, if you will, and getting more and more money. It was all considered insiders benefiting from their position and so on. So this was enacted for the purpose of stopping those practices. It was a practice at the state level, but they made it apply to all cities and towns. So it's not like Sherborn was singled out for anything in particular. This was a statewide problem. So it becomes a felony for anyone to have a municipal job and then secure a second municipal job unless you jump through the hoops. And one of the ways that it sort of sanitizes it is it goes before the chief elected board of the town where we represent the people, and if we see that this is not a bad thing and not no corruption or whatever is going on, then we can bless it and it can happen.
So this is not, so we're not really coming in under this Section B exemption. What we're really doing is voting somebody a special municipal.
We are not. We are doing under B.
Okay, what are we voting?
Well, the motion is to approve the exemption provided under 268A, Section 20B4 for Lisa Lynch for the purpose of holding 2 municipal positions, and further to approve her appointment.
All those conditions. That's where the 500 hours comes from.
Michael?
Okay.
If I could make the motion?
Michael?
Yeah, let's do it, yeah.
Along with that, Lisa has to put in a bunch of disclaimers.
Yes.
Which you ultimately have to sign as having seen. And we both, in conference, spent time with the Ethics Commission a couple of times over on this to be sure that it was done right. And
Well, that's why I want to make sure it's being done right.
Yeah.
Good.
For Lisa's protection, because she's the one who ultimately would be penalized if this is done wrong. So actually, yesterday morning, after David suggested that we're going down the wrong path with a special municipal employee designation, we again checked in at Ethics, and she walked us through the steps that had to be taken. And
On this process?
On this process.
Okay.
Walked us through the forms. So we have the things made out here, and it requires your vote and to agree for the exemption, and you have to sign the disclosure.
Okay, great.
And it has to be filed with the town clerk.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Are there any concerns around accounting control issues here with somebody receiving monies and dispersing monies?
No, the collector is primarily receiving the tax funds, and they do a cash turnover to the treasurer's office who receives it. But that's between those two offices is the only conflict that we could identify.
Well, and we also talked, you and I talked about the fact that this position is underneath 2 other positions, so it's at the authority of someone above them. So Lisa is not undertaking any of these things without oversight. She is being overseen by the tax collector and the treasurer.
Will she have check signing authority?
She will be on the bank accounts, maybe not right away, but after and it will be most likely a shorter period of time than someone who walked in off the street. But just, normally I think you would do a 90-day period of time. We'll assess that as she gets comfortable with processes and procedures, but she will be on the bank accounts.
If the offices were combined and you had a combined collector treasurer, you would be dealing with the same
Which is the case, yeah.
So it's good. So we've got some consensus that can be done. That's excellent.
Yeah, 75% of the communities have them combined.
Yeah.
And
No, that's good.
So.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah.
With questions?
How many of the 500 hours do you anticipate using?
Excuse me?
Right now?
500 as far as I know.
Well, I think right now we're talking 6 to 8 hours in the treasurer's office for Lisa, in addition to what she's doing.
It's 27 in the
Right.
It can be cyclical, so it may be more some weeks and less
500
others.
is for the whichever the lower amount is for an office, right?
The 500?
Yeah. In other words, the 500 in one office.
No, the 500 would be in the treasurer's
And the
office.
second, that's what I'm
Yeah.
inartfully trying to say, yes.
Yeah.
It only applies to one of the two offices.
Yes.
Okay.
I think a different way to ask that question, the role you're replacing, how many hours were they working?
I was
Which is you.
working 8 hours a week in addition to Pete's 24. So there were 32 total hours, and now we're at 24 hours. 24 to 26.
No, I don't mean the total. Is 500 a limit? Are you
By
anywhere
law.
close to 500?
By law.
That's a conflict of
Not-
interest
it's-
limit.
But it's
I know.
not
Is
combined
it-
treasurer and
You
assistant
holding back to
treasurer.
stay under the 500? You're not?
We can
We-
use less than the 500.
Potentially. I have been approved budgetarily up to 10 hours, but the budget was at a lower rate than Lisa is currently earning as the assistant collector. So we calculated the numbers, and we determined that Lisa could work 8 hours with the number of, with the budget dollars that I was provided.
Which isn't 500 hours.
Well, but she works for the collector for the
That
additional.
doesn't matter. That doesn't add into the 500. 500 would be in your office.
Oh, okay.
She can't go over 500 in your
Yes,
office.
yes, correct, correct.
And she's not gonna.
She will not.
No,
She will
And she
not.
couldn't. We don't have the money to pay her for that.
Correct.
even
Okay.
legally, I can't.
I'm sorry, Sean, I was following a different
Maybe I was
question.
running
No,
circles.
no, 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 I'm,
But that's why I mentioned it earlier,
Right.
Sean, that if you simply combine the positions,
It wouldn't be, it wouldn't be
there's no
effective.
limit at all.
Yeah,
You could do whatever was needed.
right.
And that may sound intimidating to combine positions, but it's fairly easy to combine positions, and it's fairly easy to uncombine positions. So it's something that you should think about, to, particularly for appointed as opposed to elected. I'm not talking about elected positions.
Well,
But
we have talked about this a lot, and there are a lot of factors. Number one, we're not sure what the requirements of the collector's office are going to be as we're picking up more and more collections and putting more of the departments into our thing. I have 2 clerks that job share a job, and they have very limited hours. If they can pick up the workload that Lisa might have picked up as we grow, then there may not be an issue, but there may be time. Right now, Heather needs some backup. She has no one to be there when she's not there. So we're looking at this as a short-term solution that may grow into something more, but her primary job, she's been with me for 13 years, is her tax collecting job. We're trying to help accommodate this whole transition, and with Heather taking the treasurer's position and getting somebody that can hit the ground running. And Lisa not only has been certified as an assistant tax collector, she has, in that process, been exposed to a lot of the treasurer things. So we felt that she would be the most help to Heather. We're taking baby steps.
I think it's great you were able to find somebody
it's
inside
a
the
really
town hall already.
terrific
That's
fit.
fantastic.
It's a terrific fit for a whole bunch of reasons. We're both very excited about the opportunity, and we sat next to each other at Treasurer Collector School a couple weeks ago out at UMass, and we both correctly calculated the tax title interest, and there's a nice camaraderie, and I'm confident that Lisa knows a lot already. So this is really terrific.
Well, I'm comfortable with her also, and I think most of the community has had occasion to work with her one way or the other, and so there should be pretty good widespread confidence in your ability, what you've done in the past, and what you're going to do in the future.
Great.
So it's an honor and privilege for me to also add to the motion to approve the treasurer's appointment of Lisa Lynch as assistant treasurer. So I wonder if I can I made the first half
So
of
we're
the
making a
motion.
combined motion?
Yeah.
Okay?
I second the combined motion.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right. All right, what do I sign here, Nancy? Do I have to read it first, or are you just going to tell me it's okay to sign?
Last year, and I don't know whether you want to have David do it at the last hammer.
I see, okay. So what this is asking me to sign is that I've received a disclosure from a municipal employee who seeks to provide personal services to a municipal agency identified above, and that we have approved the exemption. And I've got my statement here.
You don't need to sign it right now.
We don't need to sign it now?
No, we'll-
Oh, but we might, while the town clerk is here, sign the other thing.
Excellent. Why
That's
don't we
why
do
I
that?
stayed at the table, because I did see Carol is here now, so if we could sign the
Great.
note, because I
Yep.
actually have my FedEx package ready to go. I'm going to run to
That's-
Natick tonight and
That's
mail it
over
off.
there, Michael.
Yep. I'm going to let David fill the rest of this in. Thanks. I signed it for the board, you can just... Okay, good. So now we have our note, and we have already voted to approve this, have we?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. So I think we just need you as the witness, right? Yeah.
I haven't actually seen the documents. I'm not sure if this is one I only need to see you sign, or if I also need to hear you vote.
I certify that this note was countersigned and approved by the selectmen in my presence.
So if you could just take
Okay.
your vote quickly.
All
Thanks,
right,
Carol.
we'll re-vote our vote, so...
We voted, we affirm.
We'll affirm our vote.
I think I made the motion, so I'll make it again, that we approve the Chapter 90 borrowing.
Why don't we just vote to affirm our earlier vote approving the Chapter 90
Second.
borrowing?
Vote to approve and ratify.
Ratified, okay. We have a second, all in favor of that? Aye, okay, we're ratified and approved. Selectmen, majority of selectmen sign here.
Give your seal. Requires a seal.
Oh, yes.
Let's see.
How exciting.
It's too heavy to carry around.
Yeah, they weigh like 1,000 pounds.
They do.
Okay. Just pass it down and pass it the other way. So I think you sign on all the selectmen lines.
Yeah, I think that's the,
Okay.
that Michael is holding for signatures.
What's that?
You need to sign this.
Do we also have to sign this? Oh.
This is the appointment.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Is this the original?
That was in my packet.
There's probably an original someplace, isn't there?
Let me see it.
Heather, did we have an original of this letter?
I'm sorry?
Do we have an original of this letter? This is your appointment letter?
Lisa Lynch appointment.
There's nothing in the past that's been signed, it's just been a...
Well, it's got a countersign here. Would you be...
I took one of Pete's.
Yeah, she asked us to countersign, so...
Yeah.
Well, we'll countersign a copy, that's fine.
I do have the original right there.
Oh, we'll countersign your original then. Yeah.
Let me borrow, I can't use this pen, but
Okay, sure.
I just realized mine's black, you probably want blue.
It doesn't matter.
All right.
I know, I think the bank will still probably make the loan.
Not what the lawyer says we're fine.
Okay. This is the part of the meeting where you're supposed to play some music in the background when you're signing.
There you go, Chuck, why don't you sing?
That'll shorten the meeting.
It's all coming back. Okay, Chuck, you're up.
Are we doing blue?
Where's the town clerk?
You got my pen.
Carol, did you watch the sign? What's today's date?
Right here. Jeopardy soundtrack.
I think there's 3 sheets there, and then we're done. Jim Murphy's here, and he's not on the agenda. What does that mean?
He's smiling.
He's smiling good, okay.
That makes me worried.
Doesn't it? Hey, Paul, can Paul, may I have my pen back, Paul? The pen I stole from Diana, I need that back. Thank you. Okay, so we can go on now, I think, to appointments. Recycling Committee appointment.
So move to appoint Cheryl Seaver to the Recycling Committee for a 3-year term to replace Scott Embry.
Okay, and that's at the recommendation of the existing Recycling Committee. And we thank Shell for being willing to serve. And does anybody have anything else to say?
Second.
Okay. We're moving to second. All in favor? Aye. Shel Suber is appointed to the Recycling Committee for a 3-year term. Insurance Advisory Committee, and if people remember, this was a committee that was created, and we need to have a town or school retiree appointed to that committee. We advertised for the position, and we had, how many applicants, David?
2.
2 applicants, and the recommendation is?
One withdrew, and the other was Walter Thornton. He's a retired school teacher from Pine Hill.
Okay.
So I move to appoint Walter Thornton to the Insurance Advisory Committee for a 1-year term expiring June 15, 2016.
I'll second it.
Okay.
I'll just refer to him as Wally.
Any comments here? Discussion? No?
He made me do a lot of push-ups for the presidential fit.
Right. Played a lot of basketball at
I was hoping he'd be here. I was dying to see him.
That means you're going to
He was the
support it.
epitome of a phys ed teacher.
Okay.
For decades for this town.
35 years, it says here. So, good. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor of that appointment? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so 5-0 vote. Walter Thornton is appointed a member of the Insurance Advisory Committee, the town school retiree recommendation. The town school retiree member. Okay, and now we have our CM&D Director, Ed Wagner, to describe the recently successfully completed, very smooth Maple Street paving project.
Good evening. Project will be officially completed on Friday mid-afternoon. We have one catch basin to adjust. That's going to take place at 7 a.m.
Thank you.
It was an adjustment we just couldn't make prior to paving, given its location in the roadway. The striping is going to take place tomorrow morning, 4 a.m., and that'll be completed. And once we have all that taken care of, we'll be tallying the final bills and getting those in. Right now, the 2 bills that I do have in is the one for the tonnage and the grinding, and the tonnage came in 150 tons under budget, which is good news. We had no unforeseen expenses, so we will be not expending the entire estimate.
That's great.
So exactly where it lands, I'm not quite sure yet.
Okay. Nancy?
Are we going to strike the edges?
We did not intend doing the fog lines there, just the one yellow down the middle.
It's really nice. I mean, it's a lovely job. And it's so dark there, and sometimes so foggy there. I would think that would be one way that would really stand to have the edges fine.
We can certainly reconsider it. I can certainly bring that up with traffic safety and public safety and get the police officers' input from that.
You want to bring that up for discussion here?
Yes. No, it's all open for discussion, sure.
I'm very much in favor of fog lines, especially on a new road that's that black. A rural road, it doesn't have that many lights. The fog lines serve, A, to help you at night. They also have been shown by the engineers, and we've been presented that having fog lines narrows the perception of the road and slows traffic down. So
There are also
I'm in
some,
favor of doing them all over town, certainly that road.
and there's also some ramps on the edges of Maple Street for runoff, and that line helps people avoid it, knowing the edge of it.
Okay,
We can certainly add them.
okay. It sounds like you're not over budget, so you could add those.
No, we can certainly add them.
Yep, okay, good. Anything else? Anybody else up here? Any comments? All right.
Just, I did have a chance to drive the road. I love driving on new roads. A beautiful job. It looks like we didn't widen the road, which is a concern that some people have. Looked like it was done pretty well.
We didn't widen it, but there were definitely a couple areas that had become overgrown, and when they did do the grinding, you'll see that it's a little straighter, but it was definitely not widened.
And I heard that the grindings were used for the Pine Hill Road.
We utilized the grindings up at the Pine Hill Access Road. We would also utilize them on the access behind the school up into the cemetery, and we would also utilize them on the access road going up to the cell tower on Hunting Lane to further shore that up and make it much safer for winter and wet traffic up in that area.
Okay. And there were some renegade grindings. That's all been cleared up?
Yes, we did have one incident where the contractor had dumped them over a guardrail. We responded, picked it up, and right now it's still, I believe, before the Board of Health and the Conservation to further look into it. I have a letter from the vendor apologizing for the incident, and if he's required to do any further cleanup after their investigation, be more than willing to take care of it.
Okay, good. So that's on them, which is good.
Oh, yes.
Good.
I walked it this afternoon. I was driving by, and I found nothing there. Looks like it's been well cleaned up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one of the concerns was because it was cleaned up, it was potentially within some kind of wetland jurisdiction that probably should have had some input from conservation before anything was done, or at least in connection with doing it. So, but it sounds like anything that would need to be done, they've stepped up to the plate, or have told you at least they would step up to the plate.
Absolutely. I have that in writing if you require it.
Yeah, no, well, I think it's a good thing to hang on to. Yeah. Good. You have a comment?
It was cleaned
Could
up.
you just say your name?
Sorry. I'm Andy Stern, and I live right next to where the dumping occurred.
Oh, good. Was that your letter that we got?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you.
The material has been cleaned up, but because the backhoe was used, the shape of the bank has been significantly changed. It used to be a very steep bank, and now you can see it's flat, completely flat.
And that might be something, if that's a wetlands jurisdiction, that conservation might get involved with. So you might mention that to them and see if that's of interest to them.
It is. I met with Michael Lesser today, and he said the new agent starts, I think, on the 8th, which is next Tuesday, and that's who they were going to send out to do a report.
So just throw her in the fire. Is that
Yeah,
it's great. Okay, good. And was that on your property, or was it on town property?
I believe it's on the Morrow's property, but it's right next to, our driveway comes out, there's a stream that comes around and separates my property at the very end of our driveway, and I believe it was on the Morrow's property. But the wetland, the stream that it was almost dumped into, feeds my well.
Mm-hmm.
So it was 10 feet from my well.
Okay. Well, it sounds like health and conservation are both looking at that. They're aware of it. Your explanation in the letter was very helpful. I'm glad you put people on notice about that. It sounds like our CM&D director has taken care of informing the vendor, making sure that they're aware they shouldn't have done that, and that they'll take the steps to rectify if it caused any harm, whether to your property, your well, the abutter's property, or the town, or violated any regulations. So that's, I guess, we wish it hadn't happened, but having happened, I think that's the best we can do now. Does anybody else have any comments, questions? Okay, go out and drive Maple Street. I've gone down there slowly. I've gone down there twice for no reason, just because it's such a nice smooth road, and I wanted to see what it was like. It really is nice to see that road.
We did receive one written complaint, David and I, from a resident that said it was way too quiet, and he had to be extra careful getting his mail because he couldn't hear the cars coming.
I bet that's right.
I'm just happy the skateboarders haven't discovered it yet.
Well, they're going to have all that nice equipment we voted last time. So. Okay, good. Let's go on to the... do you have more on this?
Yeah.
You have the road plan too, right, Ed?
Yes, I just,
okay,
if there's
sure.
any questions on that, what I did was I went through, laid out a number of priorities. I also gave them a grading as requested, and I think there was a last-minute request for the traffic flow, whether it was a high, moderate. I didn't have any traffic official counts, so I threw in whether it was a high, medium, or a low traffic area.
No, those look like good estimates, right? Those are...
These are solid estimates without a few other things like structures, whether or not you need berm, a few other miscellaneous items. But they definitely get you right there in the ballpark.
Is there anything else you're going to do this year, or the season's pretty much closed at this point?
The season is pretty much closed. Our vendor couldn't wait to get out of here and on to the colleges that were opening up, and they were under pressure. So I'd be hard-pressed to get those guys back. I did make a phone call into the chip sealer, and he said he is shut down for the year. However, it gives us some time to think about it and which direction you guys want to go, and we'll pick the ball up in the springtime with some added Chapter 90 money and go from there.
So there are no votes that you need to make that you originally proposed?
No.
Okay.
Unless you want to get ahead of the curve and vote what streets for next year.
No, but we should talk about that probably before next season, well enough ahead that you can bid them and hit the ground running.
Yes, if we could get that done in somewhere in February, it would be great. Even though the money isn't available until July 1, it still gives me, I get a pretty good sense of what we're going to get that year around then, and we can see which direction we're going to go.
Because we're going to do the capital improvement process earlier, we'll also want to look at that much earlier than February, so that in case you want to put anything in the capital improvement above the Chapter 90.
There's likely to be a little extra money next year for the reason that there's still a $100 million authorization for Chapter 90, which the governor could release. It's already been appropriated, it's on the books. And there's talk that he will do something like that in January. He did the same last January for another extra $100 million. Then there'll be the usual appropriation. That's done in the March-April timeframe. It's bonded money, so it's not part of the state budget. It's outside the state budget. But there is a $100 million bond authorization voted by the legislature, which the governor at any time could release.
That'd be great.
Mike?
Yes, Sean.
I don't know the result of the vote, but I got an email last week. The Medfield Board of Selectmen voted, or were going to vote, it was on their agenda anyway, to spend $153,000 of Chapter 90 money on a loader. In other words, they're not carrying their money over the next year, they're using it right now. And that's one thing to consider. A loader's a piece of capital equipment, so's a road. We're just banking money it's interest-free money, or 0.75% if we borrow against it. We buy a loader right now before ours dies, we could buy a truck before winter gets here. Instead of sitting around and kicking the can down the road. We didn't spend last year's Chapter 90 money till this year. We're not spending this year's.
And we didn't vote the truck.
And we don't have a truck.
Yeah.
But we have Chapter 90 money sitting in the bank.
Yeah, we did. Sean mentioned it to me, and then I checked with Irene. I've never used Chapter 90 money to buy a vehicle because we've always wanted to put it all on the streets.
Yeah.
But apparently you can, and I didn't know that. But if you wanted to look more at the mechanics of it, Irene could present you with whatever that impact would be.
Well, the money's fungible. I mean, if we didn't spend it on the road, we'd have to spend some other money on the road.
Yeah, we need the money to do the next priority, because that's 426,000. And the way we're going to do that is the leftover piece from this year, plus the fresh money that's coming in. So if we're going to do that, that needs to be done.
Yeah, sure.
This is a big improvement over where we were before, and I appreciate the work you put into it. This is about 18 miles of roads. Is everything else, and they're mostly Ds and Cs and so on, is everything else B or better?
No. I tried to get to the ones that I knew about and were a priority for me, and mainly because they were a higher traffic area, such as Washington Street, Kendall Speen. We do have a couple other back roads that are also in need that would fall into a C category. But I also wanted to include in here was my recommendations for chip sealing. And again, chip sealing, even though the road may be a solid C, it's a preventive measure from having to pave in the future. It saves us money. It's like the coating you put on your driveway.
Yeah.
Seals it up.
So in a
protects
perfect
it.
world, is this the order in which you would do these?
Yes.
Okay.
Right now.
Okay.
That will change after this
Sure.
winter.
But it raises the question that, if I could, from what Mark just said, that Bear Hill Road is D, and Old Orchard is D, but those are below C that's right above it. And then there's a D. There are D's and C's kind of intermingled here. C minuses.
I think some of this has to do with traffic levels too, Paul.
Right. What I did was I grouped that entire neighborhood together, because when we chip seal, we're going to do Bearfield, Oldfield, all of those at the same time. So I just kind of grouped them together so you could get a readily good add up what the chip seal number is and tally up.
And remind everyone why we decided to put the NA in for chip seal on the first 6.
We put the NAs down through on the first 6 because chip seal is just not an option. Chip sealing you don't want on a road that is above 30 miles an hour. Maple Street was a former chip seal, and one of the biggest complaints we got from the neighbors there was the noise.
Now you're getting the complaint it's too quiet.
Yeah. Chip seal works great in a neighborhood such as Old Orchard, Page Farm.
It's a huge improvement. You can't win.
But the sound is just deadening when you end up with trucks and vehicles coming through. At the speed limit, of course.
And Ed, on these costs, grind plus pave, is that what grind pave column is?
Yep.
Okay, because I think at some point it stops adding up, and I don't know if you did something different further down. Like,
What I did was I calculated the two of them, because on certain roads we also have the option of not grinding and just doing an overlay. In the case of, say, Perry Street, possibly Brush Hill, we could go down through that area and not grind it, but just do an overlay. The risk you run in doing just an overlay without the grind is whether or not it's going to adhere long term. You end up with delaminations where it comes up in big patches.
Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
Forest Street was actually just an overlay, and that's been holding up pretty good with a few reflective
The one you
cracks.
did 2 years ago?
Yeah.
I noticed there's cracks appearing. I was going to actually ask you about that already.
Yeah, we've got cracks up on North Main Street also, and it all depends on the freeze thaw, and it's water that kills your roadways.
Yeah. Is there a way to get on top of those cracks as they appear, even just to seal them up or paint them over, or do something before the
Every
winter?
spring, first thing is we do a crack seal, and with Chapter 90 funds, and we do approximately $40,000. What I'm finding more and more is as we're letting these roads go, I'm going to be in the 60-70 range to crack seal everything I'd like to get to.
But I mean, it looks like there's stuff that's there that maybe didn't get hit this spring, maybe it wasn't there this spring. Is that stuff you would do in the fall before the winter, or it doesn't?
We could certainly do another round with Chapter 90 funds. If you gave me the go-ahead, I can certainly get that done before October.
Not doing anything else with it.
Well, I mean, does it make sense to do something
Makes sense,
like
because those cracks are what blow apart in the winter.
That's the thing that
There's a road. You think you can get them out? It's not too cold for them, is it?
No, you can still do crack seal. Yep.
That makes sense.
Makes sense.
How do we send them off to do that? We want to walk, I mean, you should walk out here with approval to spend something,
So that's,
right?
You can give me an approval for up to 30,000.
so I move that we authorize expenditure of up to 30,000 for crack sealing.
Second.
Okay, further discussion on that? All in favor? Go forth and seal cracks.
There goes my loader.
Hey, can you help out? Can you walk through the numbers like for
The loader's a definite concern. We've been putting that off for years and years, and I actually had a conversation with Warren and John about that today, as a matter of fact, and they're concerned it's not going to last the winter. It's something we've had on our capital plan every year I bring up, and the loader is going to die. It's going to die soon. And
5 minutes ago, I had it sold with Chapter 90 money. We just swiped 30 grand out.
Yeah, can you walk through the costs on your chart? This is very helpful, all of this. The old orchard numbers, for example. So if we just do chip seals, 40.8 thousand. Walk me through the other three numbers, because I can't get them to add up.
Didn't work right. Or you did the whole loop.
yeah. I was trying to go through this in Excel, and what I found myself, it wasn't cutting and pasting. I had to go through and change each cell. So yeah, there may be a couple that I missed.
I think the totals got messed up at some point down the road.
Yeah,
there.
typically what happens is you take the length times the width, which gives you the square yards.
Right.
And off on where you can't see is I have all of my bid prices for chip seal, bid prices for grind, bid price for actually inch and a half paving is a calculation based on the square yardage. But it's basically that would be the cost there to do the chip seal.
Okay.
If you wanted to do the grind, it would be 55,000. And then it would be 90,000 for the pavement, and then the last one should be the grind and the pave, obviously added together.
Okay.
The way I tried to set this up was in for future use, where I could just pull the street name out, add in the length and width, and everything will calculate on its own.
Okay. Anything else for Ed? All right. Thank you. Okay, we have Nancy. You're doing like a double session today here. Thank you, Nancy. This is consideration of Unibank services.
She can do this with one arm tied in front of her back.
Did the bank twist your arm?
Should I say the taxpayers are beating me up? No, I had a fall. I'm here because of Mass General Law, Chapter 60, Section 2A, which has to do with my contracting with banks for collecting funds on behalf of the town, and this is the whole online payment service. We can only enter into agreements for 3 years at a time, and our agreement is up. So we go through this exercise, and I turn the initial contract over to town council for perusal, but this is like the third time we've done this, and she goes through and redlines all the things she doesn't like, and then we send it back and they say that they accept or they don't accept, and unfortunately their council has gone on vacation, so I had hoped to have an actual finalized contract in front of you, but what it comes down to usually is neither side is happy giving up any of their freedom from liability. And so we have to decide whether or not we want the service. And since most of this is boilerplate that you find in any banking contract, you're basically deciding whether you're going to follow their rules and have their service or not. And I will say, as I said in my introductory letter, Unibank has been very good to work with. We've just spent a great deal of time getting other departments on. The fire department has gone live now with their applications for smoke detector and alarm inspections. The Council on Aging just went online for payments on their lifetime learning programs. And we're working with other departments. We're hoping to get a lot of the payment processes to go through the online process so that we're not handling so much money. Before, as you know, in the spring, we voted to make my position a collector, so we're going to bring more point of collection to my office, but I would like very much for people to get in the habit of doing it from their computers at home and not even having to travel to my window. So that's why we're setting up many of these departments to have that online payment option. But without the agreement with Unibank, it will all be flushed away. So, but the statute says that I may enter into these agreements with the approval of the governing body or the Board of Selectmen in this town. And so I have to come to you every time we have to do this and get your ratification of my choice to do this.
Are you asking us to ratify a specific contract or just to authorize you to work with town council?
Well, see, I'm not the lawyer, and I've never been able to figure out whether this is saying that you have to ratify the agreement or just agree that I can enter into an agreement. It's a fine line. I also don't know whether it means that every time for renewals and everything that I actually do have to come here, or once you say I can enter into an agreement, I can continue to renew that agreement. But I have never asked an attorney, and I'm sure that if I asked the Department of Revenue or I asked Town Council, I would get different answers from everybody that I asked. So I just do the exercise every time.
I've always proceeded that you're authorizing the collector to...
I can't hear you.
You're authorizing the collector to enter into an agreement that works for her. That's why I didn't have you guys reviewing the whole contract.
I just think it's a bad idea for us to review the whole contract because we don't really have anything to add to this. I would say town council hopefully is well-versed in this and can give you advice on what you should and shouldn't be signing.
Well, ultimately, the last couple of times we've done it, we get down to the point where she doesn't like the things they're asking and they don't like the things that she's asking, and so she says measure the risk and decide whether or not she tells me if there's something that's a deal breaker, but on some of the other things. And as I think I explained in my cover letter to you, I try to minimize the risk by having some very specific ways money can go in and out, and also moving the money fast enough that we never have a large accumulation in that account. It becomes the treasurer's problem, not mine. So
Nancy, there's no fee schedule in here, but do you have a fee schedule? Are you comfortable with the fees?
The original, one of the reasons that I took so long initially establishing an online thing was I wanted to find a process that we could use that would not cost the taxpayers in general for the convenience of those who used it. And when Unibank started out, there was no fee to anybody. They charged us nothing for our checks, for our service, or for the people. Now they do charge 25 cents a transaction. And I keep telling people that's cheaper than the stamp you put on the envelope to mail it to me, so put it through. Right. And basically, I know other operations have 50 cents, or they do a percentage.
So this is not a cost risk to the town, and it's also not a huge cost to the people who want to use it?
No. The only risk, and it exists for everybody everywhere, including you in your own home, is the cyber invasion that we see from all around. And it's a scary thought, but we try to put in place as many safety measures as we can. And there's no guarantees on that. I mean, we keep having seminars about, but even if we were not doing things online, the criminals have a way to get into your bank account anyway. So I think we have as many things in place as we possibly can to avoid that.
Yeah, David, my company last year added cyber crime to our insurance policy. Does the town have such a thing or need such a thing?
There is some sort of coverage there, but I have to pull it out exactly what it is.
Because for us, it wasn't just somebody getting into our account. It's also if they get into a customer's account via our system. Then
yeah, there's a coverage that adds on also for like employee identity thefts, and it covers that as well. But I just need to refresh myself with it because can't remember if it's this policy or previous
I can
policy.
help you offline. I've got a client that is a cyber risk insurance guru. He does the newsletter, and I'm sure he'd be happy to give us some guidance.
I would love to see something like that in place. I don't know whether you followed, but I think it was Wayland not too long ago almost lost $4 million. It was Unibank that stopped the thing from happening. So we're all vulnerable in that way. So I'd love to see us have some kind of insurance that was another layer of
Yeah, it's the ones they don't publicize, you know, where the...
And the other question I had, Nancy, was this is a 3-year contract. Do you have the option of getting out if something changes where you don't want to use them anymore?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I would
It's
move-
not a contract, it's an agreement. They keep telling me it's an agreement, so...
All right.
You finished?
Well, I was just going to make a motion, but if you have more to add, go ahead.
I just want to say I've voted in favor of these motions in the past, maybe twice already, 3 years ago and 6 years ago. And I think it provides important amenities to the community and to taxpayers. Makes things easier for them. Anything that makes things easier for them is good for all of us.
Well, I think Nancy's doing a great job of getting that new authority implemented to be able to collect from different offices and really starting on that process.
It takes education. It's a change, and people aren't always plugged into the change. One thing that I'm having a little bit of difficulty with is making people understand that this is a bank and they're interested in money. They're not interested in doing the job. So people who are still registering for things still have to register for things, and they pay the money over here. But we do have something new set up that we're working on for the burn permits this spring that will actually be a fulfillment. It won't be with Unibank. It will be with another group where they'll actually issue the burn permit number and so forth, and Tim can manage from his computer the activation of the permits and so forth. So we had to go a little different route on that because the bank is not interested in doing any of that kind of thing. They just running the money through. So we have a few bumps to get through, but we're working on it.
So do we have a motion?
So I'd make the motion that to approve the authorization of the collector to enter into an agreement with Unibank for banking services for a term not to exceed 3 years.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Another unanimous vote. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now we have Town Council Services. David, do you want to give the background on this?
Well, before you begin,
Okay.
I
You're going to
need
recuse
to
yourself?
recuse myself,
Okay.
but I noticed that there was a discussion about Labor Council. I don't have to recuse myself on Labor Council, but I do need to recuse myself on this particular contract. What is can you bifurcate that discussion, or is there...
Well, why don't we have the introductory discussion while you're at the table, and then before we take a vote or discuss a specific on the Town Council, you can leave, and then you can come back, we'll discuss the labor. Is that fair? David can explain how it sets up first. I don't think that's...
Okay.
We're not going to do a discussion at that point.
Okay.
So David, why don't you give the background?
Well, just going on the background, we normally have a contract in place each fiscal year for a 1-year contract with Town Council. Last year was Petrini and Associates. I believe it was their 3rd year of having an annual contract. So that expired June 30th, and then with the new board, the board voted to set up a subcommittee to review or solicit proposals from other firms and get an idea of what's out there in the market, which is a good business practice. And we received 2 proposals that the subcommittee discussed, made a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen to continue with Petrini and Associates for general counsel services, with Barbara St. Andre staying on as the primary attorney. And then in that discussion, there were a couple of items about the contract that was brought up, asking me if we could go back to Petrini and Associates and try to get a few more favorable items that were existent in their recently signed Sudbury contract, which was a 3-year contract. So what has come back is this is from Petrini and Associates is a $65,000 retainer prorated for the current fiscal year. It's a one-year agreement. And then there's a $10,000 retainer waiver above that 65. And
Okay,
then,
so before we get into the details of this contract, you're basically setting out that we're going to discuss town council, but it's not going to include labor.
this is for general services, and then when we talked as a subcommittee that I would go back out and get solicitations for, or proposals for labor council and bring those back to the subcommittee to make another recommendation. So,
Okay, so now I think Paul wants to recuse himself. We'll talk about town council, and then Paul has the setup now. When we come back, when we're done with this, we'll talk about labor, and you'll come back. That make sense, Paul? That work for you?
Yes, that's
Okay,
fine.
thank you. All right, so go ahead, David. You were saying you'd done some negotiating with Chris, or you, as you call him here, Christ Petrini, but I think you meant Chris.
that was a Freudian. Yeah, they came down $5,000 from what they had proposed a couple of months ago. So they went down from 70 to 65. They dropped the paralegal rate from $100 an hour to $80 an hour. And then we ironed out the proration of the $65,000, and that the $10,000 is not prorated, that would kick in at the end of the 9-month proration, whatever that amount is. And then it's just a one-year agreement, so just a couple of terms that were requested were agreed to.
Okay. And have you thought about what removing labor from this contract would do in terms of our utilization? Are we going to still be close to that $65,000 cap, or is that $10,000 going to actually make a difference if we don't have labor services in there? I just don't know how much of our usage is labor.
The labor services, we haven't really used Petrini and Associates for negotiating contracts or anything. So if they were brought in to assist the board when they were doing my contract a couple of years ago, that's extra. That was outside of the retainer. So
But they've also been involved in some personnel matters, which I would consider more the realm of the labor and employment.
Right.
It's outside the retainer anyway, right?
Right.
Yeah. So some of
that's the question. Yeah.
Some of it, most of it, is billed outside of the retainer. If it's interpreting like a personnel law or something that they do quickly, they take care of it under the retainer. Yeah. So we haven't had a discussion on the labor piece yet, but I don't see that it's going to increase our legal budget by bringing in an official other agency as labor counsel.
That's all I want to know. So we have any comments or thoughts on this?
So the 65,000 is the annual.
Is the annual retainer, and then it would be prorated from September
5/6 of 65, whatever that is,
June
roughly
30.
55,000.
Yes, I should have calculated that out.
It's like 54,000.
And when we hit that amount, then the full $10,000 waiver kicks in.
And how much have we spent since we went on the a la carte plan?
I don't have the recent bill. I had the most current bill I had was in the last discussion. I can't remember the number.
We had
off
a
the top of
major
my head.
real estate transaction that probably took up a ton of council time.
There were actually two things going on with council that, unfortunately, the Brush Hill cell tower lease. There were things that needed to be opened up there in order to locate communications equipment on that tower to communicate to the new tower that's being built. So we did have two items that continued to use council pretty heavily. So.
Okay, but those aren't particular. I guess I would be interested to know, just as sort of a learning thing,
A comparison.
that how much did we waste by
Right.
not getting this in place?
Yeah, we can calculate that out. And the other proposal that was provided actually was a full hourly rate contract without a retainer, because they were thinking that it would be in the best interest of the town to proceed with just the hourly rate. So Irene and I will continue to look at that, and we can, as soon as we get the bill, we can figure that out.
Yeah, and the real estate transaction would have been outside the retainer anyway, under the old agreement, right?
Right.
It would have. That would have been separate.
And under this one?
The same.
Still.
That's unchanged. So just so you, when you're
So that
comparing-
spike might
So
scoot it down a
we
little
may
bit.
have actually done it better.
Right.
Okay.
We didn't have a lot of routine business the last month.
Yeah, summertime should not go hourly.
We did not.
We did not have a lot of routine business the last 2 months.
So maybe it's the opposite. They let it drag our heels for a couple of months. I'm going to make a motion.
Sure.
I move to approve the updated town council services agreement as proposed with a prorated retainer fee of $65,000 and a $10,000 waiver of fees before hourly rates begin for a term of 1 year, and hereby appoint Chris Petrini and Associates as the Town of Sherborn's town council for general legal services, with Barbara St. Andre as the primary attorney for fiscal year 2016.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved in second. I think it's really just Petrini and Associates, not Chris Petrini and Associates, right?
It's Petrini and
So
Associates.
with that correction.
Yes, it's Petrini. Yeah.
So it's been moved and seconded. And any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. So it's 4-0 with 1 abstention. And David, you've checked this contract, have you, to make sure it incorporates the changes that we asked for?
Yes.
Okay. So we can just sign this one right here? Okay. There you go. All right, and so now I think it probably is worth at least having you give us a status report on the labor stuff, so we should have Paul back in for that discussion. You want to just ask Paul to come back? Okay. We're signing it, yeah.
Paul's playing Bubble Witch.
Okay, and so now that Paul is back, we can go over a little bit what you've done so far, David, as far as finding labor council, and also just give us the context that you and I have talked about in terms of what's up this year and what you would expect labor and employment council to be responsible for.
Right. The primary drivers this year that Labor Council would be involved in would be renewal of the TA contract, police chief's contract, police lieutenant's contract, the police officers' union contract, and then short time after that would be the fire chief's contract and the CM&D contract again. So the next year and a half there at Labor Council is pretty significant, has significant importance.
Okay.
So the subcommittee had asked that I go out and get a couple of proposals, and I just solicited proposals from the other applicant or the other proposer for the general services. They were still interested in being considered for Labor Council. And then we've had ongoing Labor Council with police union, solicited a proposal from them, and he did receive a proposal. So I have 2 proposals in hand, plus Petrini would be interested in doing labor, but it would be the same.
Have you looked, I know that other towns have specialized labor council, some of the surrounding towns, I know Wellesley has a specialized labor council, I think other places do. I mean, have you thought about looking at some of the established players who do that beyond the ones that we've already put inquiry out to?
Not beyond the ones. One of the ones that we had sought a proposal from was one of the strongest labor people that I knew of. So, but I haven't gone out and looked at more
Paul, you have
firms.
some suggestions?
Yes, well, I obviously have a lot of knowledge about the subject matter. My own firm is one of the leading labor council firms in the state, and I know that there are 4 or 5 6 truly excellent labor law firms. And from what I heard, I don't think you're tapping into that enough.
And that's what I was wondering. I think it makes
So,
sense to do that.
I think you ought to go a full RFP here. That is not just contact a few random firms, but actually publish something in the Beacon and see what comes in. And I bet you'll pick up the 4 or 5 top firms. And you may decide not to go with those firms, but at least you'll have the golden standard, if you will, by which you can measure all the other proposals.
But Mike,
yeah,
didn't someone mention before that 2 of the members of the personnel board are labor attorneys?
Yes, and one of them.
Could we have maybe a subcommittee for just maybe that group helping? Because they're not.
One
they're
of
not
them
really-
has actually bid on the contract.
They did?
So, yeah.
Right. Can they?
Well, I think they can if they step down from personnel if they were to get the
Okay.
contract.
Then yeah, they probably can't really advise us.
Right.
It's worth a shot.
Or whatever they say wouldn't be worth listening
Right.
to.
But that's one of the examples I mentioned. That is a truly excellent lawyer.
Yeah.
I mean, he is an amazing guy. I mean, I've dealt with him in other contexts in other towns. He's an amazing guy. Well worth considering.
Well, that's one we do have, but I think it makes sense to talk to a few other firms too.
And there's like 4 or 5 like that's out there that are truly excellent people. Well worth looking at.
Ton of money at stake.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think this is one.
The more competition, the better.
Yeah, the one thing is that we've already, I mean, we're usually in touch with the police union having meetings. We've already had our second meeting scheduled with the union, with the existing labor council, which is Brian Simino.
Well, I think we talked about the fact that there'd be a way potentially to carve out either police discussions for somebody who's a specialist in that area, or to have somebody who's a specialist work under the umbrella of a general labor council who we might hire as our lead labor council.
Okay, so we should continue on our current course of action, is what.
Yeah,
and,
that makes sense to me.
Okay. All right, and we'll keep you posted on that. And then if you want to vote to go ahead and do an RFP with approval by the subcommittee of that document before it goes out?
Yes, that's fine. Chuck, right?
Yeah.
With the subcommittee with David? Okay.
Right.
So moved though.
Second.
Okay. So we moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Yes. There you go. Okay. Thanks, David. Thanks for pulling that all together. I'm glad we have Petrini back. I'm also glad, I think that we're being at least more open-minded this year in terms of thinking about Labor Council and a more specialized group for that work. Okay, so what do we have next? I guess the only things we have left are
Back to that liquor license.
Selectmen report. Oh, liquor license never really made it into a time slot, did it? Let's do that. Thanks, Sean. Okay, so David, why don't you give us the background on this?
This is a one-day liquor license that came in yesterday, I believe, yesterday afternoon. There was, I guess this event is normally held in another state, and there was a late decision to have it held locally. And it's kind of a memorial service. Oh, in both places, okay.
Yeah, the guy died of pancreatic cancer. He was a resident of Sherborn. They're having a memorial service in California. They're having one here for those who knew him. He lived as a long-term resident of the town.
So the estimated attendance was about 75. The chief of police and fire both approved with no detail required. We've checked the insurance certificate. All the paperwork is here. The event is to be held on the 12th, and we weren't sure when the next meeting was, so that's why we brought it in tonight.
Okay, is everything in order here, David?
Yes.
You checked this? Okay. Diane, if somebody has.
Move
All right.
approval.
We've got a motion for approval.
Second.
It's got all the sign-offs. What's that? Any discussion? Sure,
Yeah.
go ahead.
And it doesn't really relate to this, except isn't the building self-condemned at the moment?
No.
Can they have a function up there?
Yeah.
The key parts were fixed.
What's that?
The key part that was in imminent danger was fixed.
So the building inspector signed off on that?
There's one portion I think that they can't go into that has to do with where the Verizon stuff is located. But in the last week and a half or 2 weeks, there were some sort of beams that were shored up. But we'd have to ask him in to give you a technical report on that. I just know that Community Center put something out that they were opening for events, and the building commissioner had agreed on that.
They had a whole room full of kids doing something, I think, so hopefully it's in good shape.
Hopefully it's okay.
All right, so we have a motion, second. Further discussion? Okay, all in favor? All right, great. Diane approved 5-0. We'll go this way this time. I think you just signed the yellow one.
The yellow
so it's
one.
just copy. All right, David, do you have a TA report?
Yeah, I just have a few items under the TA report. One is Mr. Durensis came in and pounded on my desk today, demanding that I go out and construct a cell tower. So,
What, did he drop a call on something?
so we do have an update from Christian Carmody from Insight, and they are beginning construction this week, and they received the permits Monday, I believe.
This is a significant segment of Sherborn, Medfield, and Dover that's without adequate cell phone coverage and without adequate police and fire communications. And this board signed an agreement to have a thing built. There was a permitting process that had to go through. That permitting process took a long time. There was litigation that was involved. Everything got settled. But in the meantime, I'm getting complaints about poor cell service in the portion of these three towns. And in particular, Dover considered having a cell tower at the regional schools, and I did sort of go out on a limb on that to assure people that Sherborn's tower would be able to provide coverage for the regional school campus. The regional schools, for a lot of reasons, turned down the cell tower there, but in the meantime, they need the coverage there too, and it's a public safety issue. So the thing wasn't getting built, and so I was asked by a constituent, would you go down there and pound on the desk and see if it got done? So that's literally what I did, to go, so I can assure the resident who asked me to go pound on the desk. I in fact did pound on the desk, like, let's get this thing done, and Dave jumped on it and sent out some emails and got some emails, and the stuff is going to be happening this week. Construction is going to be starting. As part of that, there's going to be important police and fire communications gear. That stuff has been ordered from Motorola. The parts are coming in, and so everything's going to come together, and at the end of the process, hopefully our police department will be better off, our fire department will be better off, our DPW will be better off, the public will get better service, we'll all benefit.
There were a lot of moving parts with talking to SBA about the Brush Hill cell tower to locate the equipment there. While we were talking to them, there was an issue that came up about the generator and the maintenance of the road at that cell tower. So we had council involved in that. There was a contract with the communications consultant, a contract with Motorola. We didn't want to actually order that equipment to have it laying around somewhere and then them not build a tower, and then we have to return $100,000 worth of communications equipment. So the timing on that is fine now. just the sign-offs with the town officials for all the different plans. That's taken a while, but it looks like it's all converging, so that's good. The other thing I wanted to say is a couple of months ago I mentioned that I was going to be meeting weekly with the top selectmen officials, which would be chief of police, fire chief, CM&D director, myself, an assistant town administrator, and the finance director. We have been meeting each week. We put out a press release saying that from 12 noon to 12:30 on Wednesdays that the public could come in. There's a sign-up sheet if they have if they want to talk to us. Basically, those are the people at the table that could order money or personnel to actually go out and do something. So we've had it on our website. It's been in the paper. So that's something good. So and that's we haven't had anyone show up for that. But I wanted to let people know that it's not an open public meeting. This is my weekly meeting. So it's you know, an internal meeting, and if somebody shows up and signs up, we can talk to them directly without having a public meeting about it. So and that's Wednesdays 12 noon to 12:30. Carol Rubenstein was on earlier and talked about the Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day for September 19th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. We're still looking for a Leland Farms Board of Trustee, somebody to be interested in that. We've hit up several people, several good candidates. We have yet to receive any application for that, so just keep getting the word out that that's a vital position that we need. Then there's MMA's Fall Legislative Breakfast coming up on October, I think it's October 9th, and October 16th, I'm sorry, in Concord. So I'll leave that on the desk for people to review if they want to attend that.
Great. Good, thanks. That's it. So now we have two selection reports. I guess, Mark, you were going to lead a discussion about general counsel first.
Well, as people recall that regarding the general chemical situation, we sent a letter to Stephen Johnson, Deputy Regional Director of the Mass DEP, as well as Stephen Sokol, who's the Senior Project Manager for the consultant, and putting some of our concerns in writing. We also copied many people in the political world. And it was basically regarding our concerns about defining the amount and the direction of the plume that's coming from General Chemical. We did receive a response on August 14th from the Department of Environmental Protection, and in which they agree to do more testing. I don't know that this. In fact, I'm pretty sure it doesn't meet what most of us were expecting or hoping would happen, but it's certainly a good first step. And what I wanted to do was not get into the details of it tonight, but more to talk about what do we as a board want to do as sort of next steps. We like to hold meetings with the DEP. We need to find a way to get the residents that are affected involved in this, and I just wanted to have a discussion around that and maybe decide on the next step.
Can I?
Sean? Okay. So go with Sean and then...
I'm somewhat quick. On those lines, for other business, I was at the following Board of Health meeting, I think after we sent the letter in, and I asked them if they were planning on having any involvement. The only thing they mentioned is that they were disappointed they didn't get to sign on to the letter that you worked hard on. So, one is a question: has the Board of Health responded? Because they indicated that they wanted to, and I think it was within a day or two of sending that letter out. So they asked if I had a copy, and obviously
we had sent this to them in advance in hopes that they would sign on, but they didn't get themselves organized, I guess.
Yeah, that was our goal.
To somewhat start the discussion, which I think you just invited us to start.
But having said that, I think we certainly we need to find a way to bring them into the process.
And that was the comment I was going to make as we venture down this road of where we're going to go. I think they should be involved as we invite residents. The Board of Health should at least be walking with us, not
Absolutely.
trailing behind, I think. And I don't think it's the first time I've stated that either, but. And you also mentioned possibly, did you not? Or a consultant?
I think we've talked about that. And
I think we should talk about that.
Paul had some thoughts.
Yeah, I'm concerned that, let me start that again. First, I want to commend DEP and the Board of Selectmen, and in particular the two selectmen who drafted that excellent letter, Chuck Young and Mark Brandon, for accomplishing a lot. The part I'm concerned about is that DEP has agreed to do the testing of local wells, and there are people out there who need to be talked to rather than reading about it in the newspaper. And I think Chairman Giamo had brought that up at the beginning, that had we consulted with the residents. So I think that there was a pretty strong sense of the board that we need to consult with the residents. And to me, that's an immediate need, something in the 2-week to 3-week period, not something where we wait for the Board of Health and we wait to get everybody together. And I would envision that we send emails or letters to all those residents, at least enclosing a copy of DEP's letter explaining something about this and inviting them to come to some kind of meeting, either with the board as a whole or maybe the subcommittee, or I had offered to do it if people weren't around, but just to have somebody explain to them, what does this involve, what is the implications for them, because at the end of the day, they need to consent to the testing. And some people may be scared off by saying or thinking that, gee, if my well is tested and something bad is found, is that going to impact my ability to sell my property and all that kind of stuff? We need to get the message out that this is to protect them, to protect those who are living there, and to protect the community as a whole. And these are like our early warning, the canary in the mine, if you will, that if there's a plume that's moving and these wells are being affected, it is in their interest and in the community's interest to know about it as soon as possible. Then we can mobilize to try and do more to protect them. But if we don't know, and if they don't agree to this testing, then we will be missing that information.
And Roger Demler may have that list, because back in 2012, when they did the initial testing, 40 homes were approached working with Roger, 30 agreed to test, and these are the results, and this is the additional testing. So Roger may have that list.
But the gist of the letter was to try and get them to do testing prior to this showing up in Sherborn.
Right.
You know, who knows about the practicality, but I think that's what we want to push DEP to do. And so maybe the best thing would be to ask Stephen from DEP to come visit with us, advertise it, so that people get plenty of opportunity to come and be here as well. Maybe bring in Carol Boyce at the same time.
I also got a letter from this FACES group in Framingham.
Yes,
I think copies were given to all of us. They want to be part too, and they have.
Would they be supportive? Yeah.
They'd be supportive. They did ask to be invited to whatever we are setting up to do.
I think we have a role as facilitators of information and, you know, as a resource. You okay, Paul?
Yeah.
I'm not sure we have, we don't have property interest in that area. I mean, typically the people who get riled up about these kinds of concerns are the people whose property is going to be directly affected. Now, it's either they don't know about it or they're not concerned, and there may be information we want to get to them to make sure they're fully informed. But when it gets to the point of the town taking a lead role in this, it seems to me that we've got a lead role on the information dissemination, but I'm not sure we need to be or are properly out in front in terms of the direction with the either the agency or the entity that caused the pollution or would be responsible for cleaning it up. I mean, we don't have a direct property interest in that. We're a facilitator as much as anything.
And Roger's been doing a great job. So whatever we think about doing, I don't think we should supplant him in any way or replace him in any way. I think we should continue to see him as the leader and point person on this.
And we've got there are some farmers up in that area. There's a number of homeowners up in that area. I don't know what their level of knowledge or interest is, and whether there's something that they feel we could be doing to facilitate whatever it is they need to do to protect themselves. But I do think it's incumbent on them to protect themselves. I don't think it's incumbent on us to step in to protect somebody who hasn't indicated that they need help or are interested in protecting themselves.
But I think we got to give them the information, and I'm afraid that still hasn't been done.
Other than through Roger? Maybe that's
Roger's the way to go. But however we do it, somebody needs to do a letter to these people saying, look at what DEP is proposing these tests. They're our residents.
Well, I mean, we could have the letter and the DEP response copied and sent to everybody in that area. I mean,
that's good.
That would at least give them the same information we have.
Again, if the Board of Health isn't doing this, what are they doing? That's what I don't understand. They are tasked with protecting the groundwater in this town. Of course the people don't know they need to be protected. I've talked to people that live at the end of Coolidge Street. He has no idea.
Yeah.
There's no clue that there's contamination floating down that aqueduct. And it's not incumbent on him to protect himself. He doesn't know. But we know. The town knows. The Board of Health knows. And each individual can't really go after him. But we have the responsibility to protect the town. One whole swath of town may devalue greatly in the next few years if we do nothing. And the individuals can't do anything about it. They'll get one well at a time picked off and not drinkable.
So is a better next step to get the Board of Health, or invite the Board of Health to meet with us and see if we can get them to take the lead role on this? It sounds like that's where...
Well, I'm suggesting that something needs to be done yesterday. And I'm afraid getting the Board of Health in, finding out what meeting date they're available, what meeting date we're available, then get them all in, and then they're going to go off and consider what they should do, and so on. I like Mike's idea of immediately let those people have at least the correspondence, bring it to their direct attention so that they know what's going on, what the EP said, and that they may be a knock on their door from someone.
I don't think those things are mutually exclusive.
Right, I agree.
Sorry.
Yeah, the Board of Health's not going to move that fast on it. They haven't yet. I'm pretty sure I've asked them to the past 3 months in a row. Roger is a volunteer, correct?
Yes.
Is he being paid by us?
No.
How do we offer more backing for him to be able to go do that?
He got elected as a water commissioner.
He's a water commissioner.
How do we give him assistance? I mean,
It's paid the same thing we do.
consultant,
That's right.
somebody that's going to run with this a little bit faster than it's been run with so far. Because we've been talking about this for 3 months. And we've yet to call a single resident.
That's my concern. That we spend all this time talking about what we ought to be doing, but at the end of the day, there are 30 people out there, 40 people out there who we know who they are, and we have lists with their addresses and their phone numbers and their email addresses. let's, because no one else is doing anything that we know of, let's do something. Even if it duplicates what someone else is doing, at least let them know.
But who's going to craft the message in the correct way? I don't think it should be any one of the five of us. I don't think it should be David.
So you're talking about spending town money on a consultant?
Yes.
And what would that consultant do? What does that consultant do for the town?
I don't know. I'm not the consultant.
I think
Roger. I think we should back Roger with. I mean, who should direct the consultant? I don't know.
I think getting the letter. I mean, I can do the letter, and I can say what the selectmen have done already, and put the response in there, and get that out. Can invite them to an informational meeting of kind of like what we held before, except this time inviting a full list of people, and have Roger here. And at some point, you're going to have a consultant or legal support. And I don't know at what point that you have to have that. I think you start with a consultant, but you're not going to, it's not like you have to act today because you're going to stop it. It's already there and pluming. So it's how you're going to respond to it. And first would be the consultant to be able to work with the community, explaining the scale of it, and then bringing on an attorney at some point to protect our long-term interest, if the town deems that we should be the ones.
Well, that's
making
what
that
I'm
fight.
still struggling with. I mean, the one thing Sean said is devaluing property, but other than that, and other than just sort of our general, role as selectmen of the town, what is our proper interest in being the lead on this, being the ones who spend taxpayer money on a consultant, and to what end? I mean, typically these kinds of problems are things that would be brought to our attention, and we would do what we could to facilitate helping the citizens who are trying to accomplish something. I mean, you did that with the intersection at Woodland Street, where there was a traffic safety issue. The selectmen didn't come in and determine to hire all kinds of people to fix that problem. The residents came to us and said, there's a problem, we want help in fixing this problem. And now they knew about the problem because they saw it every day. These people don't see it, and they may not know about it, and I think it's, I completely agree with that we have to get the information out, but then I would at least want to see some direction or level of interest from the people who are directly affected. I just don't see it, I see it as a real problem, I just don't see it as a town-specific problem. I think it's a specific problem for the residents of that area who should be doing what they can do to protect themselves and asking us to help them protect themselves, but not doing it for them. I just philosophically differ with you to that extent, that's all.
Okay.
Well, I have the same philosophical difference. When I think about your statement that you don't think any of the five of us should write the letter, or the town administrator shouldn't write the letter. To me, it's like a three-line letter, that you ought to be aware of these events, see the attached, and at least get that letter out. And I'm concerned that if we want a consultant to write the letter, by the time we get a consultant, that's going to be 2-3 months down the line. There's probably going to be a search for a consultant, and there's going to be who's going to fund it, who's going to report to, and then maybe there'll be turf disagreements over whether it's the Water Commission or the Board of Health or who should have the consultant. To me, there's an urgent need, and it's not about property values going down. It's about human life. That people might have chemicals in their wells that might be dangerous to them.
Yeah.
It's sort of a fundamental thing. So rather than trying to figure out who's the right person to do it, if I saw somebody standing in the way of a bus and I knew he was going to get hit, I wouldn't stand around and say, well, should I call the chief of police, or should I call the fire chief? I'm going to grab the guy and pull him out. And since I now have all the knowledge from these letters that we all received and issued, I'd like to get that out as a first step. Before we get to the issue of hiring somebody, before we get to the issue of bringing in the Board of Health, just right now, let's tell the people in that segment of town what the issue is, and the DEP is going to be knocking on their door, asking for permission to test their wells.
Agreed. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, and I think
how they should respond to it, we shouldn't put, but they should know.
They should have
the information.
Well, I think David already said that that's easy, particularly if Roger has the emails for the 40 folks who were approached before.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty simple, direct email. I agree with you, Paul.
I agree.
And
they should get both letters. They should get all that correspondence.
And we should also publicize it in other ways, because just because EPA picked 40 addresses doesn't just like it doesn't end at the Framingham town line, doesn't mean those are the 40 people that this is going to affect.
I also welcome Roger's input. I mean, I've been very impressed with what he has done individually and as the water commissioner.
I asked Dave to see if we could get him here tonight, but he wasn't available.
So I think it's worth talking to him. I think he was an advocate for the letter. The letter had basically the desired effect that we were looking for. The DEV is going to be talking, setting up the additional monitoring, but I think Roger's input would be invaluable.
There may be another angle here, too. This is a PIP project, right? It's got a public involvement plan from the folks in Framingham.
Right.
Is there an opportunity to have a Sherborn contingent involved in that process? I don't know. But if there were, we could facilitate that maybe if there were local residents who were interested in being part of that. It sounds like, and from this letter I got from the Framingham group, pretty much ecstatic that somebody in Sherborn was interested about the problem they've been dealing with forever, or for years anyway.
You're saying they could possibly expand?
Well, right. Is there either a contingent from Sherborn who would be part of this group and would formally work with them and actually take over the role of protecting the interests of that area because they live in that area and they have a direct stake in it? And that would be something else, maybe David to explore with Carol Boyce or somebody who knows how that process works better than I do off the top of my head.
Yeah, Carol's exactly that. That's a great idea.
So if there's 5 residents up there, or if Roger and 2 residents or whatever, want to be part of that, or if Mark or somebody wants to be a representative to that, that's an advocacy group, and that's a group that's kind of intended to comment and field information and give feedback to DEP, and or maybe that's another way to do it. I mean, maybe we can include this letter too. This is the.
Yeah, that's an excellent idea. That invites them to participate in the public involvement program.
Yeah, well, I mean, David, do you think we can include this letter too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll just explain what the two enclosures
send
are.
this around to everybody.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think by doing this, not telling them what to do, but putting that out there, having the public meeting, will turn the tide so we're not the ones driving this.
Right.
I would think. Some of the residents, I know for a fact, if I lived in that neighborhood, I'd be here every week.
Sure.
Or at the Board of Health, pounding on someone's door, calling Roger.
Just like the people at that corner were out there pushing to try to get something
exactly. So this might awaken them enough that and then they're going to go to Framingham and get the information that trickles this way. They might be handing it back to us.
Yep. Okay.
Do we need a motion?
Sounds like we have a plan anyway. I don't know. Do we need a formal motion to do this? David's kind of authorized to do.
Yeah.
We just said okay. You could just shoot us an email when you've gotten that done, Dave.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to set a date when you want to have it on an agenda, or not at this point?
We could put it on like the first October agenda or something like that.
In another month, let's talk about it again. And see where we're
in
at.
October?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't we do that? And maybe you could invite this Ann Sullivan to that.
Could we invite Roger too?
And Roger.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was kind of hoping he'd be here tonight.
Do you mind if I get a look at your draft to the residents before it goes out?
Sure.
Good idea.
I'm thinking it's just a transmittal. You may be interested in the attached information. Contact me if you have any questions or something.
Right. Right.
But I don't know. But yeah,
I'll send it
work
out.
with Mark on
If that's all it is, I don't
Yeah, I'll
need to
send
see
it out to you guys first, and then
I think your letter says it all, really. I mean,
input.
I don't know what more David would want to say, but maybe, I mean, maybe you have some
That's
thoughts
fine.
on it.
They'll just say enclosure, enclosure.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Sean, you had a selectman report too.
Well, I do. And in the packet, I think you all saw my email to David requesting that we discuss this. And then late last night, I finished doing somewhat of a presentation. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it at all. David sent it up.
I did not get to look at that.
Abbreviate it somewhat. Over the past few years, in on different boards, different committees, we've probably all seen the presentations leading up to the library expansion. I was on traffic safety as they started. I remember the early stages talking about parking. There's been years of talking about parking in this area around here. I'm sure right now there's no parking spaces because there's 2 meetings going on. So this isn't just a library issue, it's a town campus issue. This past year, I think you championed an article to use engineering services to assess the effects of that during the library construction. Since then, I've put a lot of thought into it at different times, talked to the police chief, talked to some of his staff during the library fair, and traffic safety, of course. I still attend some of those meetings about the possibilities of closing Sanger Street. I also brought it up to you. One would be, my proposal is to do it as a test, and reason being to find out the effects immediately and also the long-term effects of what would happen if we close it. And part of this comes from, and I'm a construction guy, I'm an engineer, I think of all the pitfalls that can happen when you're trying to build something. And I think it's highly likely that they're going to have to close the road anyway when they go to do that construction. I think it's logical to think that they would benefit from closing the road, to be able to put that into the pre-plan of here's where all your construction stuff's going to be, here's where your people are going to be. You have access from both sides, but the road's closed. You don't have to worry about police details, all those things that go into construction when a building's right next to the road. Thinking broader, if it were to work, I think the benefits of closing that road for the campus would be huge. We would gain parking. Certainly it would help. I mean, the Unitarian would be a wash, but the Pilgrim Church has an issue every Sunday anyway. It would potentially help that. It would certainly help the church parking. They'd be able to add spaces in what is now a roadway to account for the spaces that they've really not accounted for their construction. They had to show, I don't know if you all remember the presentation, but it pretty much ate up all the spaces here. If they ever used all those spaces, the cruisers would have to go somewhere. So that needs to be addressed. And ahead of addressing it for good, this test, which may only be a month, might show that we should seriously think about this grand plan, including that closing. So, in a nutshell, what I'm proposing is that we try it as a test. I've spoken with the police chief about some of the logistics as far as notifying. In an ideal world, I almost wanted to try it maybe before school got out or during summer and ease into it, but there's always the chaos that is this week anyway. First day of school was today. Traffic gets slammed. People all came home the past week or two, and then we have the holiday weekend. So prior to winter, I'd like to see us try it, and we would notify it. We have the lighted sign that we used on Maple Street. We'd notify people. We'd put up the detour signs, it's really only Solomon Street. And then we would test it.
Describe where exactly you're...
So for the test, either just south or just down the hill from the library, parking spaces would be, for me, I think, a good place to test it. It won't block any spaces. It's far enough up that you shouldn't have trucks getting stuck in there, right? If a truck inadvertently says, oh, I'm going to go, and now I'm stuck in here, they can hopefully loop into Unitarian and get out. We want to minimize that. From the bottom, if they do, they have the loop at Pilgrim Church. This is as there's still that learning curve. The library will still have use from the upper portion for their spaces that are in front of the building, and that block of spaces that's really next to the community center across the street. Those are accessible from below. And then you picture one of the pitfalls would be Pilgrim Church. There's the chaos that is Sunday. By leaving the block up there, they'll be able to pretty much use their flow. It shouldn't interrupt that. They actually will somewhat gain spaces because they won't have two-way traffic flying up and down the road. And it's a good test for what would happen during the construction. Because what would happen during the construction, if that was successful, was you'd pretty much block off so that anyone coming in would only be coming in to get into the Unitarian, the community center, and the construction would block from there to what is the lower part of the library site, down towards the Pilgrim Church parking lot. And that whole swath would become part of the construction. Accessible probably from both sides, but for the test, I'd barricade off just below the library.
It's a really interesting idea and proposal, particularly for the construction. It makes a lot of sense. The planning board was talking about this idea. The traffic safety group had mentioned a group of students from Northeastern that were taking a look at Maple and Washington several years ago, and this is pretty much what they had proposed.
It's a little different. That was one way.
It was one way.
That was a circle.
With a rotary.
Yeah.
Right, and the rotary. But the idea, long term, the planning board was kicking around the idea of it sets up much more of a campus, much more of a town of Natick. 25, 30 years ago, downtown Natick was in pretty rough shape. That gazebo, that town center, actually was kind of an anchor that kept it going. It certainly makes sense in terms of the construction at the library, but I think it also makes sense in terms of trying traffic. I mean, that is still one of the most dangerous intersections in town. Did traffic safety take a look at this idea?
They did. I was with them this past week. I think it was Wednesday. And they voted unanimously to support the test. And one of the things to think about, and I did mention it in here, is we might see a positive impact on the safety of that intersection. I mean, and engineers could study it and everything else, or we could just try it. Because some of the difficulty in that intersection, everybody knows, is pulling out and staring at the person across from you as you're trying to take a left or even go straight. You don't know. You're distracted by the one car that's actually going to hit you in the door, which is what happens. So that won't exist anymore. Or it'll be down to, 0.01% of as many people that go straight across. I guess if you're leaving the library, you can still come out that way. But other than that, everyone's turning left or going right. So the turning, it changes the turning scenarios and may actually decrease. I don't know that we have enough statistical data to show that ever, because we only have a few accidents a year, but it may help in safety.
You had something to add, Rick, or no?
No.
Okay, Rick. Nancy.
Is there a desk that we can pound, or should we pound to get moving forward with the engineer taking a look? We've always talked about dealing with the campus as a whole, and we voted at town meeting to have an engineer looking at another access to the overall library project and access to this campus from another direction. And certainly if you shut that off, that again forces to do, they've got to go that way because you can't turn left when you get to the intersection.
Yeah, and I don't think that's exclusive. I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
No, but we don't seem to be moving forward with the engineering study. And the other thing is, I have an office in the corner of this building down here. We often hear the squealing of brakes and this connection of metal to metal or whatever. And I would say most of the time it's people coming out of Maple Street that have the problem because they cannot see to the left of the sight line. The time you have when you look to the left when there can be nobody there and when somebody can be on you is so small. So it's fine for the little piece that will be addressed by that, but the big piece is to better that sight line coming out of Maple Street or put a track right there or something, because the accidents still occur. They may not be as good. I think that thinking that that's going to address a big piece of that is folly, but I do think it's just one more inconvenience. I'm not sure whether, I mean, I know you always put safety first, but can we get the engineering study going in conjunction, library projects moving forward, and somebody come up and give an opinion about that access in the back so that we move on that? I don't know what it takes a desk. I think Paul was successful founding on a desk, maybe.
Well, can I comment to some of that?
Yeah, I think Dave was going to answer who the engineer is.
The intent of the engineering study was that we would use it when the engineer was familiar with the whole project. We're right now executing the contract for the owner's project manager, so we're just reviewing it at that stage. So,
well, so we don't have a design, is what you're saying?
right. So once the owner project, well, I mean, we've already met with the owner project manager, but you know, we're not going out and hiring our own engineer. We're going to be utilizing the same engineer that the library is using. So we're not at that point yet.
I think the idea is to not miss the opportunity.
Right, right.
All right. Oh, Sean, you were going to respond.
Yeah, well, I did have a couple. One, the article, and you were very careful in crafting it, and I'll remind everyone, that was money to be spent on just assessing the short-term effects for parking. It wasn't to solve the entire campus. We could spend $100,000 talking about this campus and still disagree with how to fix it. Engineers can I assure you, we talk in traffic safety about Maple Street almost every meeting. We talk about sight lines. It's never been, we can keep talking about it for 5 years. That's not what I'm offering. And I'm offering something that may or may not work. It's not going to cost anything. And I'm just ahead of the final plans for the library, and we'll know definitively, or we can at least sit here with some opinions of what we saw instead of what might happen. It's all hypothetical when engineers talk about some of the traffic things that happen in Sherborn. It's, you know, the statistical models that can show lots of things.
So you're not trying to solve every problem?
I'm not trying to solve the Maple Street. I'm saying it may affect it. It's definitely going to affect the traffic in front of Heather's front door.
Which is why
That's
the hand is
indisputable. How bad that'll be, I don't know.
Well, that's my question. How do you assess that? I'm not 100% opposed to this, and I will tell you why. Because when you're coming down 27 to take a left or right onto Solomon Street, the people coming down Maple Street have almost hit me. I'm sorry, coming down Sanger have almost hit me taking that left or right a million times.
Right.
So without that traffic, that eliminates my concern with my almost to be newly licensed son driving. But I do worry about the number of vehicles that I know use Sanger Street that now really, honestly, have no other option if they're going to Ashland or to Holliston. They become Solomon Street traffic, and that is probably a substantial, at least the Ashland traffic is probably substantial.
Some of it
that's
is.
the only question. There's no assessment yet of what the increased traffic flow in Solomon will be.
Right, we don't know. But what we do know is that's a very easy thing to determine when we start.
How do you determine it if you don't know how many people were going down?
Well, you know
before?
you'll know if it becomes a problem, right? You're going to know really quick. The first couple days are never going to be easy, right?
Agreed.
They're not. And so the traffic might back into the downtown Holliston, but remember, those are people that live in Hopkinton.
No,
The Sherborn residents are stuck in traffic either way.
backing up all the way down Solomon Street to 27.
I understand. But we don't know the effect. And you also don't know from day 1, day 2, day 3, that might be different than day 14, because people may just, you start hitting this model in statistics where all of a sudden everything changes, and the guy from Hopkinton says, I'm done, I'm not going through Sherborn anymore. Forget it. And he doesn't go by your house anymore. And you know, it didn't have any net effect on to the people that live on Hall Street.
I mean, just as a, I know it sounds silly, but people who don't know the woodland will find the woodland. It could affect that street as well. But anyway, I just asked the question, if someone could consider how to assess the additional number of cars going down Sound One, I would appreciate it.
Can I offer an idea? We have a signboard that we can use to do traffic counts. Put the signboard on the bottom saying that for a period of time, let's say 2 weeks, get a fair, I think that would be a fair estimate of how much traffic.
Especially now that school is back, I think this is a perfect time to do that assessment.
Yeah, and that's what we had discussed with traffic safety as well. It wouldn't have been a good assessment to do it during the
I
summer.
am not a not in my backyard. I am a let's try it, but let's make sure that we have the proper assessment.
Right.
Sean, the library building committee, I assume, would support this, that this certainly makes sense for them. Have you talked to them about that?
Well, I spoke briefly with Jim Murphy, and maybe that's a good segue to ask them about it.
Okay, so we saw the agenda item, I called Sean, we had a conversation, we tried to get a sense of what was happening. I'll just tell you, Mary's here, she's chairperson of the library trustees, I'm one of the 9 library trustees. Our next meeting is September 15th, and Sean offered to come and explain it if he needed to. We do have a building committee. Mark knows that one of the other trustees is his wife, Stacy, and Chuck knows that one of the members of the library building committee is his wife, Libby. So a lot of people probably have some sense of what this is. So we did reach out after we talked to Sean to our OPM. The OPM is somebody that we have had in the past, and he is the person that we're currently negotiating a contract with to continue as OPM for the project. And he quickly said that he was supportive of a pilot program because he thought it was proactive and forward-thinking. He thought that it is a tight construction site, and that it would be probable that there would be at least some portion of the construction project in which it would be beneficial to close the road. So to see what would happen early, he thought would be valuable information to obtain, and it would also kind of give people already early thinking about how they want to navigate around their own town. I think you're right about the Hopkintons and the rest of them. It might take them a little longer. The library director also indicated that she was enthusiastic about trying an idea, see how it goes. But we haven't had the whole board meet. That won't happen until September 15th. We also have a liaison on our trustees to the building committee, and they would talk to the building committee, hopefully, about the same thing, try to get some input. Having previously been on the board, selecting myself, I like pilot programs. I do think they're beneficial, and I think the chief has kind of pointed out what we did. Similarly, when there was questions about what was going to happen at the top of Maple Street, we were going to narrow it from 2-car width at the top to 1-car width at the top. And when we discussed it, everybody said, "Oh, it's going to be awful, it's going to be terrible." And traffic safety went out and did, I think, what Heather's kind of talking about, which is first find out, okay, now you have 2-car width. What's the backup on a Tuesday morning, school day? What's the backup for making left-hand turns at 8 o'clock in the morning with a 2-car thing? And then when we narrowed it to 1-car, because we did it as a temporary fix, we didn't do it as a permanent fix. See how much the count was. And traffic safety actually had people out there with a 2-car and then the 1-car. And I think the chief might be better than a traffic safety counter, because he's got a counter himself, and he could do the same type of thing, and we could get data about how it will work. So, I think there's a positive curiosity about the idea on a pilot basis, and then it really has kind of 2 follow-up dimensions, which can be influenced by the data that Sean and the chief and everybody else acquires, which is One, should it be applied throughout the construction period? And then two, should it be applied on a more permanent basis? As Chuck said, when he was on planning board, members of the library committee did also meet with the planning board, and that item was discussed back then with his gazebo idea about whether or not you block off the top or some other portion of Sanger Street. So I think there is at least a positive curiosity about it. We will have more information after our September 15th meeting. We will bring it forward, either phone call to David or to Sean or to anybody else that you direct, and we'll also solicit comments from the building committee and bring those forward for your time.
So can we put it on the next agenda, 2 weeks?
Well, I think I'm going to vote in favor of Sean's idea. And I'm going to do that on the basis of what presentation Sean just did. Excellent presentation. And on the chief's comments. And on what I've heard from Jim Murphy. I don't think I need to delay this a lot. This is only a pilot program. We've done pilot programs elsewhere in town. We did them for like the Western Avenue, Whitney Street intersection, for example, and found out that it didn't work. And when we found out that it didn't work, we didn't let it go the whole 2 weeks or whatever it was going to be. When it didn't work, we killed it. And so if Sean and the chief and others are in agreement that if it doesn't work, that we'll stop it, then I'm willing to try it. Get what we can of education. I like the idea of having the traffic counts as Heather had requested.
Prior to the closing.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Start with, get that data so you have a baseline, and then also do it after the closure, see what the delta is. If those pieces are there, I'm ready to vote for this now.
You can't vote for it. You got to make a motion.
Well, I'll make a motion to close Sanger Street to through traffic on a temporary basis, not to exceed 14 days? How much time do you need?
I don't think 14's enough. 21. I think the first week is a wash. It's just bad. People are confused.
It's going to take time for people to adjust.
I think you need at least 21 days. So 3 full weeks. And again, remember, it's not starting day one. It's starting, I think, 2 weeks into it. We can't start it while school just started anyway.
No.
We need a week.
You have to do this baseline.
Yeah, the baseline.
Right, and I think the baseline needs to be a couple of weeks.
So who's going to manage it? Because don't we need to empower somebody to do this?
Yeah, well, I think the chief's empowered to do it, no?
We've done it. We can manage.
Or the public safety committee themselves, but they don't meet
the
often.
whole study and the closure and the observation.
We can do that.
What about empowering traffic safety committee?
Well, they're a committee that only meets, they'd have to, I think the officials that we have.
David to work together on this.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Who?
So are you willing to...
You were one of them.
You were one of
Tons of spare time, yes.
Yeah, you
You
do
willing
that.
to take on...
Myself, David, and the
chief.
So Sean's going to stand at the corner of Washington.
Yeah, that's right.
We've set up things before at intersections, testing things, so that.
I mean, I would second Paul's motion as long as it's understood this isn't starting until, 2-3 weeks from now at least, right? After the.
Yeah, I hadn't finished the motion. I got to the number of days, so...
Well, I think we need 21 days, no less than 21 days.
So there's like 3 parts to this motion. First, to move to close Sanger Street to through traffic on a temporary basis, not to exceed 21 days. To learn the impact of such closure before the construction on the library project begins, with the following conditions. First, that the traffic count for existing conditions be accomplished first. Secondly, I want to put in there that if the results prove that it doesn't work, that it will be shut down.
By any public safety officials. I mean,
And the third condition is that Selectman Sean Killeen and the police chief and David Williams would be authorized to supervise this experiment and to report back to the board.
I think they may need more time. I mean, I'd love to see some bad weather, like a snowstorm.
yeah, I don't want to limit, I don't want to limit it to the days and then we hit 21 days and we have to shut it down.
But you can always come back to the board.
After 2 weeks, you
Well, I want to make sure we have a meeting during it.
Yeah.
We have meetings every 2 weeks.
Well, true, so in all likelihood.
We want to avoid holiday weeks.
Right. Or run right through it, but we don't want the data to get skewed. I didn't realize it's a 3-day weekend.
I share Mark's concern. I think 21 days seems short. I would do
28 days.
28 or a month, 28 or 30.
And sometime during that, you're right, we're going to have a meeting, we can extend it out and say, we haven't learned anything. Because it was
You okay with 8 days?
the first 2
Yeah, if it
days.
doesn't work, man.
That's fine.
We're
I'll
gonna
take
close
that as a
About
friendly
30,
amendment.
30, Chuck?
Yeah, let's do 30 days. I don't know. Anybody got a coin?
For the arbiter.
30 days. Yeah, 30 days.
Is that okay with you, Mark? This is your idea? Okay, so taking it as a friendly amendment to make that 30 days.
So last week, I'm saying, what was all Mark? I'm going to do it for 3 weeks.
Here's Mark Roman's home number.
Here's a clicker.
All right, good.
Second.
So we have a motion second. All in favor? Aye, good job, Sean.
All right,
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, we need to set a meeting date. We would typically meet, I think, September 17th, which is...
Well, just
I mean,
one
sorry,
comment
September
before
18th.
we leave this, which is to Jim Murphy, that please do continue to consult with the library trustees and with the building committee, and do provide that feedback, even though we've taken this vote. We very much want to have that information and that input.
Yeah, that's fine. And Sean, if you could just keep us posted as well, because we have some communications going out to the town in early October, and it might be beneficial to include information about this.
And it's,
in that.
and it's understood if there's a problem, we're blaming it on the library. Right?
That's exactly it.
I think we have wives of you that we can blame.
Yeah. You guys might be more at risk than I.
One thing to think about is what people do when they don't realize it's closed and they drive past it and they have to find a place to turn around, like Woodhaven, the Citgo station,
Right, and I've started working on that with the chief. We're going to have plans for that, and we're going to have plans for the first several days. What the PD is going to do and how we're going to, I mean, people are going to be notified well in advance anyway, but that doesn't mean they're going to think about it until the day they pull
Well,
in.
of course not. And then if you miss it, and then if you realize, oh, I should have gone left back there, now I've got to turn around.
And we got to make sure that they're not doing the left turn at the split, because that's the next option.
Well, yeah, but I think most people would know not to do that.
What happens more than you think during the day.
Really?
Yeah.
Nancy.
We probably should let the schools know way ahead too, because some of the buses are there.
I couldn't hear.
The buses go down the street.
School buses.
No, we want to find out what they're going to do.
It's an experiment.
They can back up.
There's a control.
The late buses.
Remember, there is a bus driver that represents that group on traffic safety.
I think the late bus might go up, Maple, because it lets kids off in the library.
They'll let them off at your house.
Not Maple, I keep saying Maple Singer.
It'll just be later.
Well, it could maybe go into the do not enter part of the police station, up
Yeah.
that little ramp.
Can't navigate that with a bus.
All right, let's get our next meeting set and go home.
All right, I can't do the 17th. I sent around a memo to Dave and to the chair. I had to make a commitment to another board of selectmen to attend their meeting. So I'm wondering if we can find some other date other than that one.
Well, Mark's
Reason to come a week
saying
from now?
the 16th, so. No, I can't do
So
this. I
15th
think
work?
we should get back on an every other week schedule.
15th works for me.
15th work?
It's a Tuesday.
Yeah, I can do
If
it.
I need to, but I would like to get back on a every other Thursday schedule if we can.
Well, then let's schedule
Or
it.
every other Wednesday.
No, Mark can't do Wednesdays anymore.
Then every other Thursday.
Let's schedule that now.
Well, let's do September 24th then, and then we'll be on that
Right.
schedule, I guess. I don't know.
September 24th, I
Or the
have,
15th and the 1st.
I'm out of town on the
All
24th.
right, you know what?
can't do the
Can
24th.
we just do the 17th and just do every second week? And Paul, I'm sorry, just call in or something. I don't know.
I can't call in if I'm attending another Board of Selectmen's meeting. I gotta pay attention to the other board.
You don't want to do the 15th because we can get to the 15th and then do the 1st as the...
I can do the
The
15th.
15th and the 1st.
Let's do the 15th and the
Then
1st.
you're on, you're on
Yeah, we're
first
on that
and
every
then...
other Thursday.
Okay.
Michael,
That's a great idea, Mike.
I have a bit of concern because we're waiting moment by moment for the tax rate setting process. And as you know, the assessors had a big computer problem that's put us behind. And they have to come to you for a classification hearing.
Yeah, when's that going to be?
Well, we don't know that because the DOR hasn't come back with setting the values yet. So it's,
So it's not going to affect when our next meeting is then?
well, they have to advertise a week ahead before they can have the hearing.
But we can't set
Well,
anything
we're
at
not
this
going to wait
point.
for them to tell us that. We're going to have a meeting.
I'm just asking if you could be somewhat flexible if you have to throw an extra meeting in, because once they have to have that classification before they can send their documents to DOR for approval, and then they come back, we have to get them to our amender to.
Are you counting on their desk, Nancy, to make sure that
I am
they get
count
that?
every day. I
So they're going to ask us.
This is come back to haunt me.
I'm just asking you to be open in case things fall into place and then they can go forward.
We aren't setting the only meetings, we're setting our next meeting,
Okay.
all right?
Well, when I hear you talking about the 23rd and the 1st, it makes my heart stop.
On the 15th and the 1st of October. Okay, David? Those are the next two, the 15th and the 1st of October?
Yeah.
And then if there's something that comes up assessor-wise, then we can do it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Playground bill starts October 20th.
So is it?
We're not having a meeting that week. We're not having a meeting that week unless you want to post to be down there helping me.
That's actually a good idea. Then you get all five of us.
Off-site meeting?
4 nights in a row.
All right, guys. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Second. Okay. All in favor of
Oh,
adjourning?
he left.
Would be in favor of adjourning. Are you in favor of adjourning?
Yeah, but I wanted to ask, is the police chief gone? Because
He's gone.
there was this shooting in Millis, and I wanted him to reassure the public that we're all...
Well, now you've raised it, but he's not here to reach the public.
I can reassure the public that that entire crew was down in your neck of the woods before they got here. Everyone we had and could get a hand on was down there.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know what's happened while we've been here, but they were still looking for them.
Yeah, there was, the news is full of this incident in Millis.
Yeah.
It's not all that far away. So I wanted to catch him, because he was here, I wanted to catch him before he left. But I vote
Okay.
yes.
Do we have a motion, a second to adjourn? All in favor? Okay, thank you.